It is not right. A woman is an adult female, and the court has made that absolutely clear. I actually welcome the judgment because I think it gives real clarity. It allows those that have got to draw up guidance to be really clear about what that guidance should say. If you want to fight for Remain, vote Labour. Now, there are some who say we don't need Brexit to work. We need to reverse it. I couldn't disagree more. Day after day, there are new allegations of sleaze, of favours, of privileged access. And it's all very well the Prime Minister saying, well, say now, well, I'm paying for it.
You've decided to repay £6,000 worth of gifts.
Lord Ali is facing an investigation. I wonder how concerned you are that your biggest donor was not fully transparent.
Are you saying you made a mistake?
It was right for me to make those repayments. Thank you. Of course, I wouldn't want Donald Trump round for dinner, but don't underestimate the danger to the world if Trump is re-elected this time around. I'm anti-Trump. I would like to send my warmest congratulations to President Trump on his inauguration as the 47th President of the United States.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning and welcome to Morning Glory. It's 3 minutes past 6. It is Tuesday the 14th of October and ladies and gentlemen, we have got an awful lot of news for you this morning. It is of course the day after the night before and the day after the biggest release of hostages at the end of what would be described I suppose as the war in Gaza. The Sun goes with freed from hell after 737 days in captivity. 20 Israeli hostages are home at last. As you wake up this morning, I thought this when I woke up this morning, suddenly these people who have been in ghastly conditions, living underground in caves, literally in tunnels, without very much food, without very much sustenance, without really seeing the light of day, probably for 2 years plus, they actually were able to spend the night in a warm bed, in a cosy bedroom, in the house of their relatives and of their loved ones, and whether it was their girlfriends or their fathers and mothers, most of these young people showed incredible strength. Many people said yesterday they don't look that bad. Well, once you look very closely at them, they've all got a sort of haunted look about them. They all look as if they are much lighter than they were when they went in, and you can't imagine the horrors that they went through. We'll talk about that. Trump lets end the Ukraine war, is what it says on the front of the Daily Telegraph. Apparently Trump's so encouraged by what he did in the Middle East, and he did hold court yesterday for quite some hours. We'll talk about that in a minute. He now thinks that this historic deal in the Middle East could pave the way for more long-range weapons to bring Putin to some talks. And apparently Volodymyr Zelensky is due to visit Donald Trump at some point, perhaps later on this week. The Daily Mail goes with Noah's hero is home. And astonishing, the Daily Mail can reveal he kept the fact that he's an Israeli Special Forces soldier secret from his Hamas captors for 738 days. That's the famous pictures, of course, of Noah Argamani snatched by terrorists and put on the back of a moped and driven away from Israel on the October the 7th, 2023. The big story from the domestic point of view is what happened to Keir Starmer yesterday, because, of course, he's been accused this morning by Dan Hodges in the Mail of being the John Terry of Gaza. You might remember John Terry was the Chelsea captain who, when they won the cup final in the Champions League, wasn't actually playing, but decided that when they won it, he would put a football kit on and run onto the pitch and go and grab the trophy and hoist it above his head as if he had been part of the team that won it. I mean, he was in a way, but Starmer had no business really being there. He was completely and utterly humiliated by Donald Trump, not once, but twice. When he was called up to see him on the stage where he was holding court, he came behind all sorts of other people from different countries. I think he was 37th in line by the time he actually got up on the stage. And then finally, and we'll show you the clip, he was introduced by Donald Trump and he wandered up like a child as if he was about to speak. And Trump just turned his back on him and he had to wander back into the sort of the mix behind. Absolutely ridiculous. And then they made him stand next to a guy who was a lot taller than him as well. So, I don't know. I don't think it's a good day for Keir Starmer. We'll talk about that. Plus a load more with Charlie Rowley, who's here to look at the morning papers. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. I mean, I'm getting so good at this, it just stops immediately as soon as I stop talking. Charlie, very good morning to you.
Good morning, how are you?
I mean, we've got to start off. Obviously, the front pages are full of the joyous pictures of the hostages being returned home. And as I say, I thought this morning, as I woke up, you know, we're also kind of used to waking up in relatively calm surroundings. You can't imagine what these people have been waking up to, even if they've been sleeping in these underground tunnels. And imagine what you must feel like if you're one of these hostages. You've been held for, you know, 737 days, and suddenly you wake up in your own house, or in your parents' house, or in your husband's or wife's house. I mean, it just must be an extraordinary thing.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, what those people went through, those poor hostages, they've gone through hell for the last 2 years. And you're right, I suppose every night they've probably only dreamed of being back at home with their loved ones in their own bed.
You'd probably even try not to dream about it, because you would, in case it never happens.
Well, exactly. And then for it to finally happen, you must think, you know, you might have to pinch yourself in the morning to think, did that actually happen?
They might be waking up going, is this actually real?
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, and thank the Lord that it is, because, you know, for 2 years, having been snatched off the streets at a music festival, a calculated, vile terrorist attack by, you know, the Hamas organisation, terrorist group, in such a circumstance that was just unbelievable. Young people having a good time celebrating what should have been a joyous, fun occasion 2 years ago, to now have to go through everything that they've gone through.
Do you remember watching it and thinking, I remember, you know, the morning that it happened, and I think it was a Saturday morning, wasn't it? And so, you know, you weren't really expecting to wake up to something like that. And I remember putting the television on and just thinking, crikey, you know, what you're seeing is almost inhuman. The way that they were dragging people away from their loved ones, they were shooting people in cars, they were, you know, throwing people on the back of motorbikes. You know, we saw those terrible images of that young woman in the back of a pickup truck, the leg all twisted, you know, people spitting on them in Gaza. I mean, it was just ghastly, wasn't it?
Yeah, totally. And look, you know, obviously huge celebrations for the 20 who've been released, but, you know, let's not forget many more hostages that you know, haven't survived, you know, at that.
Well, that's the only sort of, I suppose, sort of negative, isn't it, about yesterday? They were supposed to also release 28 bodies of the dead hostages, but they apparently don't know where many of them are. They've only released 4.
Yes, and, you know, that's just, you know, for everyone that's been critical. And of course there's questions maybe about the proportionality of a response to the attack, but that's for a later day. But the reality is Israel suffered a terrorist attack. Its people were abducted, abused, put on the back of motorbikes, murdered, raped, have been abused probably for the last 2 years, obviously malnourished, and bodies that won't be found because Hamas don't know where they are. They don't know what they've done with them, supposedly. You know, this is a brutal terrorist organisation.
Because
let's not forget that.
Many of them would have been dead for quite a long time, presumably. And so, you know, nobody even knows where they were being kept, or nobody knows really where the hostages were, because they were released, I think, in different times yesterday, partly because they were all in different locations, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And look, you know, this is the brutality of the regime. You know, people where funding was going into trying to support Gaza, a particular part of Palestine. You know, the Hamas organisation were building tunnels underground.
And somebody said to me yesterday, you know, did it not occur to the civilians, if they wanted to avoid any of the damage that was coming from Israel attacks, to hide in the tunnels? Apparently they didn't think of that.
No, well, I mean, but I imagine a lot of people probably in Palestine, the public, didn't know where they were.
Well, because Hamas, no, the reason is Hamas wouldn't let them in the tunnels,
No.
because the tunnels weren't built for the safeguarding of any Palestinian people. They were built for, you know...
Well, the secret
network of terrorist activity. Absolutely extraordinary stuff. Because I remember when they found some of the tunnels, some of them were packed with money, you know, there was all kinds of contraband, also a lot of the aid went straight into the tunnels. I mean, it's just an extraordinary thing. And it's almost as though a lot of the conversations yesterday towards the end of the day were about, you know, can they make this peace effort actually work? Will Hamas finally hand over their weapons, and will they stop killing people? Because they're still doing it.
Well, they are, and they're still at large. And look, as part of the hostage release, you know, Israel agreed to release about 250 what were now Palestinian prisoners, some of whom very much aligned with Hamas. You know, people that wanted to see the end
many
of
them in jail for murder, for terrorist attacks, for all sorts of things going on in Israel. But let's have a look at Trump, because it was definitely Donald Trump's day, wasn't it? And it was very funny watching some people who weren't able to actually acknowledge the fact that it had anything to do with Donald Trump, you know. Not least, of course, Bridget Phillipson. And we gave her a going over yesterday when she appeared on Sunday on all the talk shows, saying that she acknowledged America's part in the peace deal. And you're kind of going, really? You acknowledge that, do you? And then, of course, it was Mike Huckabee, the US ambassador to Israel, who said that she was delusional and that she should really thank Donald Trump. And then the funniest thing of yesterday was that guy, the peace envoy, Rick Koff, is it?
Steve Witkoff, yes.
Steve Witkoff, who came out, having obviously been told to say something nice about Britain, came out in favour of Jonathan Powell, but not in favour of Keir Starmer.
No.
Because the way that Trump treated Keir Starmer yesterday was very clear that Trump has got him on his NFI list, if you'll pardon the pun. Let's have a look at the first clip. Trump humiliating our Prime Minister.
United Kingdom, where's United Kingdom? Where's our friend? Come here. Is everything going good?
Very good.
It's very nice that you're here. These people all came in like 20-minute notice, and I think it's fantastic.
So first of all, he refers to him as these people, right? And Starr was clearly expecting to be given some kind of special mention or possibly an opportunity to speak. And he just kind of pivots, and Trump just turns around and just turns his back on him.
Yeah, it's
just very funny. And Starmer sort of wanders back and stands at the back, having been sort of completely and utterly... I don't know, emasculated, I think you would probably say. Yeah. Don't you think? It just looked idiotic.
It's awkward, it's uncomfortable, it's, as you say, someone that I think was hoping to step up to get sort of a special mention.
But like, we couldn't have done it without you,
couldn't have done it without you, exactly.
Didn't get any of that. And in fact, I mean, people who know Trump since have said to me, he does that to people. You know, all of that was entirely choreographed. He knew exactly where Starmer was. He didn't need to ask where he was because he'd seen him when he brought the Pakistani leader up, right? And then he also knew by saying these guys came at 20 minutes notice, meaning he had no part in the idea that it was actually happening.
Yes.
So again, very, very clearly humiliating him in front of the world to say, well, you didn't really need to be here, and the only reason you are here is because I've come here and you want to hang about.
Exactly. And the brass neck, I mean, if I was Donald Trump, I mean, obviously this is part of his brilliance, I think, because I totally agree. He would have known exactly where Sir Keir Starmer was. He would have known where Macron was when he first met Macron when he arrived. But it's about... you know, Keir Starmer has basically gone against Donald Trump's plan, you know, by recognising Palestine as a state before all of the hard graft that had been completed.
And the Americans
by the
had
US.
said that was actually quite a dangerous, both the Americans and the Israelis had said it was quite a dangerous manoeuvre because it almost collapsed the peace talks.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I think, you know, that little cheeky retort from Trump to say, oh, where are they? Oh, they're here. Oh, thank you for joining.
Yeah,
you know, and in 20 minutes notice, you just want to come and turn up. And like he said, Dan Hodges' piece, just want to turn up and get credit for something that you've really actually
I love that
almost
the John Terry of Gaza is a great line from Dan Hodges. I mean, it really is. But I mean, we were watching it yesterday. It was on Jeremy Carl's show, and he just kept repeating the clip because it was so ridiculous. that, you know, our British Prime Minister, we've got to a point now where Britain is not part of a coalition of countries that have made a peace deal happen. It has no role necessarily, it has no role really in the future of what happens in Palestine either. You know, Yvette Cooper, apparently, who wasn't even there, is having some kind of summit meeting coming up in the next few days with other world leaders, which will be the usual suspects from Europe, presumably, none of whom have got a hotline to Trump now, and none of whom will be asked to do anything to try and make it all work. No. And so, you know, it's almost like he's clutching at straws, hoping against hope, you know, because all of his supporters, about 3 left, I think, say, oh, but he's such a good statesman on the international stage. Well, on the international stage, he looked completely and utterly like a fish out of water. Yeah, because, you know, he's pursued the wrong strategy. His view of the world and his why people celebrate, well, I say celebrate, why people, I think, want to point to positives about Sir Keir Starmer and say it's, you know, he thrives or does better on the world stage is because it's a talking shop. Yeah. You know, and for all the talk about, you know, whether it was coalition of the willing, trying to get European partners together to try and fix the war in Ukraine and Russia, Donald Trump has actually been getting on and doing stuff and talking to the Qataris and talking to the Middle East to say, right, you've got the money, right, let's get together, Egypt, and we'll actually work this out together and we'll come up with a plan to actually fund because one of the points in the 20-point plan is for a recognition of Palestine as a state. And so in many ways, Starmer and Macron and Mark Carney jumped the gun. Yeah, you know, because they've recognised a state that hasn't been recognised by the world community because it doesn't meet the criteria of the world community, because part of the criteria for recognition is that Hamas disarms. Yeah. And so they made a complete fool of themselves. Totally. And until that was the case, and until the hostages were released, that's all that had to happen, by the way. The war could have come to an end a lot sooner had those hostages just been released. And that is, again, you know, people have got to, when they listen to the arguments about this particular conflict, they've got to ask themselves, well, why did that not happen? Because the terrorist organisation Hamas wanted to hold on to those hostages. They wanted to destabilise the West. It was their bargaining chip, which is appalling and abhorrent. And you know, they were clearly going to lose this war. Exactly. And until there was the obliteration. But by recognising the Palestinian state before any of those things were in place, Marco Rubio said, and he's a Secretary of State, so there's no reason to disbelieve him, that actually set back the peace process, and it almost ruined it. Yeah. You know, and they act, and Israeli politicians were yesterday saying the same thing, that, you know, the British government is seen as actively acting against the interests of Israel. Yeah, which in the context of the history of all of it is just insane. Yeah, and given our own involvement in the Middle East, for not for the better, you know, you want to have a Middle Eastern ally. You want to share the intelligence with Israel. You can gather intelligence, and that's part of their criticism, that they didn't have the intelligence to prevent October 7th. That's some of the criticism that's laid to Benjamin Netanyahu. But as an ally in the Middle East, as someone that we can share intelligence with, that do have the capabilities to let us be a partner and to defend the UK from the possible threats that are emerging, particularly from Iran in that part of the region, why on earth would you want to go against them? Exactly. Exactly. According to Dan Hodges' piece here, he says he spoke to a senior diplomatic source who had close oversight of the hostage and peace negotiations, and they were very clear. This is what they said. Yvette Cooper running over to Paris, just a desperate attempt to make herself look relevant. Britain had no role. Yeah. And I think that's true. And that is the truth. And I think, you know, just the very question, if you're a government minister like Bridget Phillipson trying to claim, oh, the UK has played its part. OK, just what part? Oh, no, well, it's played a significant... No, just tell us specifically. If you're going to go on national television or radio and declare what great support and what great insight you know, the UK government has had in bringing this whole conflict to an end, you've got to be able to back it up. You have. And, you know, it didn't take long for that argument to be debunked. Because they think everybody thinks like they do. So if you say to them, oh, yeah, we played a big role. Anyway, next item. No, it doesn't work like that. You know, journalists would tend to say, well, really? What did you actually do? Let's have a look at what Trump said about the skies being calm.
After so many years of unceasing war and endless danger, today the skies are calm, the guns are silent, the sirens are still, and the sun rises on a holy land that is finally at peace, a land and a region that will live, God willing, in peace for all eternity. This is not only the end of a war, this is the end of an age of terror and death, and the beginning of the age of faith and hope and of God. It's the start of a grand concord and lasting harmony for Israel and all the nations of what will soon be a truly magnificent region. I believe that so strongly.
And one of the things that he did was he got Turkey, Egypt and Qatar to basically strong-arm Hamas into doing what they did. And that's probably the way to ensure that it lasts, that it holds, because, you know, it's not in anybody's interest in the Middle East, really, now for Hamas to reinvent itself and to try and take out Israel again. They've tried and they've failed. And I said yesterday, isn't it interesting that all of the propaganda, all of the kind of marching around that's been done in the West, all of the kind of demonisation of Israel has actually failed in the end. You know? Totally. And Netanyahu has emerged, actually, like it or not, as Trump called him, a great wartime prime minister.
Yeah, totally. Look, you know,
because he's done over Hezbollah. He's taken Iran's capability to make a nuclear bomb out of realms of possibility. He's denuded Hamas. You know, he's made the world a safer place.
Yeah, and you know, people will always, because they don't like Donald Trump, they don't like the way that he operates, they don't think, you know, people have this romantic view of what a politician should be, which should just be diplomacy and, you know...
Yeah, but what is it that they actually think is a good politician? Because do they think Keir Starmer's a good politician? Because he isn't. Well,
that's what people on the left will have you believe, because, oh, it's all peace talks and, you know, we must recognise the state here, we must recognise that, we must, you know, play to that person's tune and just, you know, by the way, a woman can have a penis and all those...
Except the left hates Starmer as well, though.
Well,
you know, I mean, that's his one supranational talent. You know, if he was going to be, you know, a superhero,
he's a unifying prime minister.
Yeah, the unifying man. Everybody hates me.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
Well done, Sir Keir Starmer. But you know, is it Jeremy Corbyn that they think is a great, you know, the friend of Hamas and Hezbollah? Is it, you know, Ed Davey, the man who likes falling into water? You know, who is the perfect? You know, if they don't like Donald Trump, who do they like?
Yes, well, I think that's Zach Polanski now, isn't it, leader of the Greens?
Oh my God.
People seem to be jumping on that.
Tooths.
Yes, exactly.
You know. But this is a guy who's got a deputy who was celebrating on October the 7th, right? Because he's a mad Islamist who thinks that, you know, Palestine should be able to go and invade Israel whenever they like. He's also a man that thinks that by hypnotising women he can make their breasts bigger, right? And he also thinks that shoplifting's okay and legalise all drugs. So again, you know, a lot of stupid people have gone, oh, he was quite good on Question Time, so I think I'll join the Green Party. I mean, how thick are these people?
Exactly. And all
bloke's a complete charlatan.
Well, he is, yes, yeah. And all the while, you know, people won't... And I think it's really important to sort of stress the pictures that we saw yesterday, you know, in what other world, under what other leader, Prime Minister or President, would you actually see the President of the United States, Donald Trump, as it is, at the lectern, surrounded by leaders from Europe, leaders from the Middle East, on all sides of people that have, you know, been involved in all kinds of conflicts over the years.
All trying to get a bit of the action, right?
Exactly, exactly. But all getting behind him, Donald Trump, to say, actually, yes, we do want peace, we do want stability, we do want to change that region for the better. You would never have had that under Joe Biden, you know, stating the obvious. No. You would never have had that under Keir Starmer on his own, or just all European leaders trying to work with the Middle Eastern partners. It required someone with the drive, the business-like mentality, the deal-making abilities and success, and the absolute strength to be able to strong-arm people to say, well, if you don't do that, then we're going to come after you, or if you don't do that, then you won't get that investment there. You needed somebody to drive this through and see through. You need to be completely blinkered at times to say, that's the end game, that's what also, I want to see, that's what we're going to do.
They call it the art of the deal. It's about negotiating, and you know, everything that is negotiated by this Labour government appears to end up with Britain getting stooped, basically, you know, because we don't appear to have any ability to negotiate anything. You just go, oh, OK, then we'll just do what you want.
Well, I know it's a Tory tagline at the minute that the Tories put out, but I think it does work and it does stick that, you know, whenever Labour negotiates, Britain loses.
Yeah.
I do think that's...
It's true. I think they nicked it from me, actually, to be honest. But there we are. It's 23 minutes past 6. Charlie Rowley's here. We've got lots more to talk about, including what is going on with this China scandal, because the Tories attempted last night in the House of Commons to try and get some answers out of what's left of the Cabinet, who haven't gone off to try and pretend they're helping with the Gaza peace deal. So we'll let you know what happens with that. Also, we'll tell you about a prisoner that was allowed to walk out of jail, which is rather bizarre. And also, what Boris has been saying about the Boris wave. 24 minutes past 6.
troops have come out just a couple days ago, so it is effectively free now, would you?
Yeah, it is, but obviously the original whole land, even where Israel is now, that was all Palestine's land anyways. So you want the land back.
Right, okay, so where are those Jews going to go?
Where they came from. They went to Palestine. They were somewhere else before.
Where
I'm not too educated
they?
on the history. I'm not too educated on the history.
So you're happy for the Jews to be removed from Israel?
Very happy for that to happen.
Okay, and how would you want that to happen?
God knows, innit? I don't really know.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 27 minutes past 6. I'm Mike Graham. Charlie Rowley is here as well. We're looking through the papers to see what is going on this morning, and there is plenty to talk about. We've got Shababa Mahmood talking about Islam being the biggest threat to the UK at the moment. You don't want to miss that. Kenny from Edinburgh says, "Hi, Mike. Why can't we have a leader like Donald Trump? Keir Starmer is not a leader, and quite frankly, I'm embarrassed that this guy represents us on the world stage." Well, you and me both. And Mark in Banbury says this, "Morning, Mike. Starmer was totally dismantled in a few painful seconds by the absolute master of the put-downs yesterday. That was a Hillary Clinton moment right there. Starmer's face was a picture of the awful realisation that his total irrelevance on the world stage was there for everyone to see in all its glory. Now Rodney has to face the China crisis on his return, and his cronies are systematically tearing apart. He's done, and inside he knows it." I mean, a lot of people are saying to me they can't understand how Keir Starmer's even still in the job. I mean, the number of blunders that this cabinet has made, that his government has made, the number of complete and utter screw-ups that they make on a weekly basis. You know, the fact that this whole one-in, one-out thing is a complete joke. You know, the China crisis currently, which is the latest scandal to hit them. You know, all of the people have had to resign over various problems. The whole Morgan McSweeney nonsense, which is still ticking away like a time bomb. You know, this new book is out pretty soon, isn't it? The fraud book, which is going to lay bare all the nasty dark side of the internal workings of the Labour government. It's not great, is it?
It's not. You're absolutely right. It's telling the amount of people that have just deserted the ship of Keir Starmer, you know, whether it's people very high up in number 10, whether, as you say, it's that Morgan McSweeney issue around the funding of Labour Together that actually got Sir Keir Starmer into the job of Labour leader and then Prime Minister. The amount of people, the cabinet, you know, open warfare with each other, sort of briefings against each other.
Lucy Powell about to become the deputy leader.
I mean, you know, who claimed that
against Bridget Phillipson, who was accused by Chris Philp on this very show yesterday of being a liar. Basically, he actually said she's told lies on national television.
Well, I've no doubt that they probably have, and you know that'll all come out in the wash because they don't like scrutiny and they don't understand. What I think is missing just from this Labour government is just any idea of an alternative view. You know, they are a campaign organisation. The Labour Party is a campaign group. They're still acting as if they're campaigners. Right. They haven't understood and can't grasp the fact that you're in government. You know, you do make the decisions. You do have the responsibility.
You've got to do something.
And therefore you get the you know the scrutiny and the attack when you certainly get things wrong. Because you do things. You say what you've said one thing for an awful long time and how terrible it was, the Tory government, and then you come in and do something that no one's ever asked you to do, like taking away the winter food allowance, hitting our farmers over the head with inheritance tax changes. You can't understand that, you know, talking about how the last government was so terrible and riddled with scandal that taking clothes from Lord Alley and glasses and not paying, and free theatre tickets and all the rest of it, when the country you claim is on its knees. It's only on its knees, by the way, half the time, because you've talked down the country, you've talked down the economy, and then said you're not going to raise taxes, and then you go and raise national insurance contributions, hitting small and medium-sized workers and businesses. And then you say we're not going to raise taxes on working people.
The list is getting so long now.
Exactly.
You can't mention all of it because we'll run out of time.
Well, sorry,
I'm not complaining. The list is literally as long as both your arms, you know. And this is the thing. And I mean, only last week, I think it was Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, saying that she was going to clamp down on these pro-Palestinian marches, hate marches. She was going to make sure that, you know, the police had new powers. But of course, Saturday came, they didn't do anything different, and they left it to be exactly the same. Lee Anderson from Reform quizzed her yesterday on that very subject. Have a look.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Whilst the Prime Minister is swanning around Egypt, shamelessly trying to claim credit for the Gaza-Israel peace deal, we have the Mayor of London stating that the chant "from the rivers to the sea" is not anti-Semitic. Right. I think it is anti-Semitic. Does the Home Secretary agree with me or the Mayor of London?
Home Secretary.
Yeah, I really don't think the honourable member should have lowered the tone in that way. These are very serious matters, and we should all be united in this House in supporting the peace process in the Middle East, which undoubtedly has made progress in the last few days because of the actions of the American president and other partners in the region. One of the reasons why I'm reviewing the wider legislation in this area, including the thresholds for what constitutes a hate crime, is precisely because we have many contested phrases which currently, based on context, fall foul of being prosecuted. And I want to make sure that we have the most robust legal mechanisms, that hate speech and hate crimes are always prosecuted in our country.
So, as usual, whenever they get put on the back foot, they don't answer the question. It was a simple question. Do you agree with me that "From the River to the Sea" is an anti-Semitic chant? Or do you agree with Sadiq Khan, who, by the way, has not yet still tweeted anything about the release of the hostages at all? Considering that the man likes to tweet about Gaza and Palestine quite a lot. Quite surprising, really, isn't it?
Well, exactly. And when you're the Mayor of London that is able, frankly, and you've got sweeping powers to be able to work with the police to say, no, we're not going to have protests this weekend, or no, actually, I think that will just incite more
she can't bring herself to say "For the River to the Sea" is an anti-Semitic chant because she supports people who shout it. Yeah, well, you know, she lay down in front of a Sainsbury's to stop people selling Israeli goods inside it. Right, that's one of her things. She went to Greece to welcome illegal migrants coming into Europe. You know, this is not a woman who's ideologically, you know, sort of suited to clamping down on pro-Palestine protesters because she agrees with them. Yeah,
and you know, to allow, as the Mayor of London did, that message to be broadcast against Parliament. You know, it was put up against the Elizabeth Tower. It was by some truck that put it up in lights. I mean, what so annoys me is that there is this idea that on the right, if you talk about things that matter to people, like immigration, like patriotism, like putting up a few flags, you know, you are called everything under the sun by the left. You're either racist or you're far right,
Islamophobic,
or you're Islamophobic, all the rest of it. And yet, when it comes to a message which is so blatantly clear, you know, from the river to the sea, it is literally about exterminating and washing away an entire. The idea that then the left say, "Oh no, it has two meanings. It has a duplicate." No, it doesn't.
No, it doesn't have two meanings at all. Absolute rubbish. Samara Gill was down at a protest, right? First, she finds a guy that's got an ISIS flag, and then she asks him about what he thinks it's all about, and he says, "Oh, I don't know too much about the history of it." And she says, "Well, why are you protesting still? Well, there's a peace deal." And he says, "Well, because we basically want to get rid of Israel." Yes. You know, and he admits it. These are the people chanting "For the River to the Sea." They're anti-Semitic. It's not a question. It's an obvious truth. Yes, but even she doesn't know, apparently, because she doesn't know if she agrees with Sadiq Khan or not.
No, but how can you not? You don't need to know any kind of history. No, it is literally washing away. Yeah. So I don't know why people find it. But for the Mayor of London to be completely
exactly what they're chanting.
Silent, exactly. And for the Mayor of London to be completely silent on it, I think just shows why people in this country, in this great city, the Jewish community, are living in fear and have done for so many years under his leadership in London. Because
he doesn't do anything to stop people behaving in a way which is not only anti-Semitic, but is dangerously anti-Semitic and threatening. Let's have a look at what she has to say about Islamism in relation to the attack at the Manchester synagogue.
May I start by calling this attack what it was, an evil act of anti-Semitic terrorism that targeted innocent worshippers on Yom Kippur, the holiest day in the Jewish calendar, and that was carried out by a terrorist pledging his allegiance to the warped ideology of Islamism.
Right. So if somebody's carrying an ISIS flag on the street in a protest, that's okay, apparently. Here she is talking about Islam being a threat to the UK.
This government and I myself, as the Home Secretary, have a very clear-eyed view of where the threats that face this country are coming from. It is true that within our domestic extremism landscape, the largest cohort of work that keeps our security services and counter-terror policing busy is related to Islamist extremism. We will not shy away from confronting those issues and dealing with them in the appropriate way. And I guess what's happened in Manchester on the 2nd of October asks a bigger question of all of us. This threat is something that we have been living with for some time, and we have not yet defeated it.
I wonder why that is, that we have not yet defeated it. Could it be that people have been frightened to say that it's a threat? Because remember how many times over the course of the last few years we'd been told by the police and various other investigative bodies in this country, oh, you know, the big increase in terrorism right now is coming from the far right. And you'd always go, sorry, what do you mean? And they'd go, yeah, it's gone up from 1 to 2. You know, meanwhile, you know, the Islamic threat is in the thousands, you know. Yes. And they would try and kind of work this, you know, statistical BS, if you'll pardon the expression, to try and make out that, oh, the fastest rising terror group is the far right. It isn't.
No. No, you're absolutely right. And, you know, people will try and play with those statistics to say that there's been an increase, therefore, but whereas actually the Islamist extremism has maintained...
It dwarfs anything else.
It
totally dwarfs anything else. Absolutely right.
And that's why the Prevent sort of strategy, the Prevent programme, is overwhelmed, because it's dealing with so many people that are radical Islamists and extremists on...
well, there's 50,000 people on a watch list, for heaven's sake. You know, and they're all Islamists. You know, in Britain. You know, that's more practically than we've got in the army.
Yes.
You know.
Yes.
It's quite worrying, isn't it?
Totally.
I mean, I shouldn't be laughing.
No. But all the while, at the same time, the government tries to tell us that, oh no, we need an absolute definition for Islamophobia. Yeah, right. And actually, we need to it's us. In fact, there will be commentators telling us, you know, white, middle class, or working class Brits, that we need to be more integrated with our migrant counterparts. Well, hang about. You know, the threat is not coming from us, you and I. And it is coming from a radical extremist Islamist faith that is in this country, that has been here for a long time, where you get hate preachers in particular places of worship, that you get them flagrantly on the streets.
And they hate Britain.
And they hate Britain.
And everything it stands for. This from Jamie on the Isle of Wight. He said, Mike, the Trump humiliation from Starmer yesterday was one of the funniest TV moments for years. I'm just wondering if Starmer will be off to Washington on Friday when Zelensky is there for a photo opportunity. Great show. Well, I mean, it's such a good clip. I think we might want to show it again. Shall we have another look? Here's Keir Starmer thinking he's about to be honoured by the President.
Where's the United Kingdom? Where's our friend? Come here. Is everything going good?
Very good.
It's very nice that you're here. These people all came in like 20-minute notice, and I think it's fantastic.
It's just the back where he turns his back. You know, the funniest thing was that, of course, Starmer puts out a tweet yesterday towards the end of the evening, which is the picture of him standing quite close to Donald Trump, as if they've had some kind of great meeting of the minds. It's quite embarrassing. We'll show you that when we come back. 6:39.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 6:42. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, until 10 o'clock. Charlie Rowley's here with me. Nigel from Brighton says, Mike, I noticed the BBC website can't bring themselves to credit Donald Trump with the Middle East peace plan. They refer to it as the US brokered plan. Well, that's obviously the Labour line, isn't it? You know, Bridget Phillipson came out with it. We just saw Shabana Mahmood saying the same thing. You know, we're very grateful for, you know, the role America played along with other countries in the region. I mean, that's not really the categorisation of what happened, is it? No. You know, what happened is Donald Trump came up with a plan. He got Qatar, Turkey and Egypt to put pressure on Hamas. He signed out all sorts of other countries, completely ignored Britain, France and Canada because he thought that they were acting against his direct interest in bringing peace. And so the idea that nobody wants to give him credit for it in the Labour government is pretty ridiculous, isn't it? Sean in Gloucester says Trump has provided, if anyone needed, what a true leader is all about. What have we got? The snivelling, flip-flopping, useless liar Keith Starlin that tries to claim credit for the hostage release, doesn't know what a woman is, and imposes a load of rubbish on us that we neither want or need, accuses us of being far-right racist, taxes all of our money, etc., etc. I've genuinely had enough of this moron. Well, I mean, what can you say? Let's have a look at him. Let's have a look at Donald Trump humiliating Emmanuel Macron yesterday.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel. I would imagine Emmanuel standing someplace behind me. Where is he? I can't believe it. You're taking a low-key approach today. He's my friend.
Yeah. He's not really my friend. I've just humiliated him in front of all of his countrymen who are watching him. Tony says Starmer put his hand up like a schoolboy. Here, sir, he did. When he asks, you know, where Starmer is, knowing exactly, he goes like that. I'm here. It's just ridiculous.
It is, and people. The trouble is, you know, these politicians, whether it's Macron, whether it's Keir Starmer, will try and spin their way out of it and say, "Oh no, we played a leading part."
We've all seen it.
The public can see through it. That you don't need to be a political expert, analysis, commentator.
No.
You can see it for what it is. That know, these two men, whether it's Macron and Keir Starmer or Carney in Canada, was completely sidelined, completely irrelevant, completely on the wrong side of the argument. And now Donald Trump has got.
This is where Trump is, by the way, he's just strong-arming Macron. Macron's trying to kind of, hold onto his arm and try to push back on it. It's just kind of bizarre. Yeah. Very odd.
Exactly. Trying to steal the limelight, trying to be seen as some sort of, the alpha male of leading, right. Projecting on this image of strength. The only one man that's got this breakthrough is Trump. Yeah. And the BBC online can't come.
They can't handle it. Sky yesterday as well. Beth Rigby was going on about how, they showed pictures of Macron and Starmer walking into the hall, and and she was saying things like, Britain and France having their moment. They're not having a moment. They're having a sort of moment of distress because nobody cares what they think. Nobody's interested in asking them anything. And Keir Starmer last night put this out, put the picture of him standing at the podium with Trump shortly before Trump turned his back on him. So it's completely, out of context. And he says, President Trump, this is your achievement. I thank you for your tireless effort to deliver this moment. The UK stands ready to support a full implementation of the peace plan. Well, you might as well say that, but you might as well say the US stands ready to support, or the UK stands ready to support, whatever you want us to do next. Yes. Because that's what he's effectively saying.
Yeah, exactly.
And to get back in your good books.
Yeah. And let's hope for, the next conflict that's resolved. Let's hope that Donald Trump actually gets that breakthrough between Russia and Ukraine to end that war as well. All the while, again, you'll probably see something similar. France and the UK that drew up this coalition of the willing. Yes. That hasn't met since. I mean, they had one meeting.
Coalition of the willies, I call it. Because it's complete. And I include Ursula von der Leyen in that, by the way. Yes. I'm pretty sure she may have one. Marco from Swindon says, "Good morning, Mike. I could not stop laughing after watching Starmer's appearance on the world stage. You telling me the guy flew all the way to Egypt, probably with about 25 cronies, literally just to say hello and then get pushed back to the back of the stage. Absolutely brilliant, totally deserved. Well done, President Trump." I mean, I assume he's back today, is he, Starmer? There's no reason for him to stay in Egypt. Trump was back on the Air Force One plane last night, flying back to Washington, D.C. I imagine he's there now. So God knows what's going on with Starmer, because he will have to presumably appear at Prime Minister's questions this week, won't he?
Well, you'd hope so. And of call me a cynic. But, you know, if I was in number 10 and if I was looking at the polls, if I was looking at how terrible things are going, I might be drawing up a plan to say, well, Prime Minister, can we not put you on a plane to Ukraine for Wednesday morning just to try and move that conflict along?
On your way back from Gaza, when you just stop off in Ukraine and then you won't be able to make it back before about 2 in the afternoon on Wednesday.
Exactly.
Then they can put Lammy up as the Deputy Prime Minister.
Oh, well, in fact, actually...
Safe pair of hands.
Probably more of a reason to come back, actually. Prime Minister will scrap that one.
Safe pair of hands. How about this? Keir Starmer, another one for you on his pronunciation problem. We had him in India the other day trying to say things in Hindi, which was a real car crash, you know. This is him trying to say Turkey.
I'm on my way to the signing ceremony for the peace agreement, which is truly historic. And we all owe thanks to President Trump, to Egypt, to Keir and Qatar. Really important now that all parties implement this, and we stand ready as the United Kingdom to play our part.
Sorry, did he say Turkey? Turkey. I know that Turkey changed their spelling of their country from Turkey to Turkiye, but it's still pronounced Turkey.
Yep.
Because I remember doing it when they announced this, and I went, you know, can we say, you know, that we now have to pronounce the country, which is not far from Greece, differently? It's now renamed itself from Turkey to Turkey. Should have another look at that. He's calling it Turkey. Turkey Starmer.
I'm on my way to the signing ceremony for the peace agreement, which is truly historic. And we all owe thanks to President Trump, to Egypt, to Keir and Qatar. Really important now that all parties implement this, and we stand ready as the United Kingdom to play our part.
He's now thanking himself.
Yes.
Thank you to Turkey.
But it's
really important.
But it's these little insights of the man that you get to know where his mind...
What's going on with his arms? He walks like a Thunderbird puppet, isn't he? They don't move.
It's absolutely true, but it is these little insights that you get to know what the man's about, because he's thinking, right, how do I pronounce this? Oh, I must appease the global, because I'm more interested in the global than communicating the success to my actual British citizens and the British public who pronounce it
said to me this morning, we don't call Germany Deutschland.
No, exactly.
Yeah, what's that all about?
Exactly. But he would probably do that because you know, he's trying to appease, you know, I think he once said he was more comfortable at the World Economic Forum than he was in Westminster or something like that.
I don't think he's comfortable anywhere, to be honest. I mean, everybody looks, he just looks uncomfortable. Wherever he goes, he looks uncomfortable.
He's, you know, and he wonders why, and his strategists and his pollsters and his.
I'll ask you. I'll give you time to answer this, because I'll ask you before the break, and then we'll just have a quick break. You know, as an advisor to these people, you know, do you go into the room in the morning and he goes, "How do you think that all went?" And you go, "Actually, Prime Minister, I think it was pretty awful." Do they tell him the truth? Hold your thought and come back and tell me. 6:49.
There will definitely be an urgent question. We know that the Commons Speaker as well, who will be the one who will grant the urgent question, was not particularly happy about what happened. And when it was first reported that the case had collapsed, he said that the government needed to answer lots of questions. And at the time, we didn't even know that the CBS had asked for that material. You know, this was like a month or so ago. And the Commons Speaker was not happy. So we'll definitely see some action in Parliament, and we'll see how the government does.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. 6:53 is the time. And one of the things that we forgot to mention yesterday in all the excitement of the release of the hostages, of course, was that Keir Starmer is now so unpopular that the darts competitions that have been going on over the past few days on Sky, they've had to sort of somehow mute the audience reaction to an awful lot of the play in the tournament, because they all keep chanting Keir Starmer's we can't say the word this time of the morning, but it starts with a W and ends with an R. The bit in the middle, I'm not going to say it. But they keep just chanting everywhere. You know, whether it's a football match, whether it's darts, whether it's, people walking down a street in some kind of protest, which is considered to be, more from the right than from the left. They're just chanting it all the time.
Well, he can't bank on support anywhere, and his popularity has tanked.
It has. Very well said. So let's come back to the other thing to watch on that clip of Starmer. We'll play it throughout the morning. Is Georgia Maloney's reaction, because she can barely stifle a snigger as she watches the man who is not very friendly with her. She doesn't really like him very much. You can tell, getting absolutely humiliated. So when you're sitting there in the room, you get back to Downing Street after one of these jaunts, and presumably there's some kind of debriefing goes on, and the Prime Minister sits there. What would you tell him about something like that? Would you try and make out that it wasn't as bad as it actually was, or would you tell him the hard truth?
Well, it really depends. If he came back himself and sort of said, it was a bit awkward, that bit, then you sort of say, well, yes. If he's acknowledged it, and if he knows, then there's nothing more that really needs to be said.
Right.
But they might have just, they might overlook it, because they might just think, whenever you're with Prime Minister, whenever you're with Donald Trump, it's always unexpected, things will happen,
and
things might go wrong.
We put out this tweet that makes it look like you're big buddies. Okay.
That's the only thing we can salvage, or, you might not say that to him, but you might just think, things will get awkward, so it's all baked in, we won't dwell on that, let's just focus on getting a message out, and he might just accept that. But I'm sure he will know, and he will have seen, and he would have felt, surely, that was a bit awkward.
You can see from his reaction, and when he walks away, his little shoulders are down. When he turns around, he's got this sort of hapless expression on his face, like somebody just slapped him with a wet fish. And he's kind of standing there, And
because you've got to choose, you've got to pick a lane. If you want to be seen with Donald Trump, if you want to be front and centre, behind him on camera all the time. But he obviously was awkward when Donald Trump was going off on different tangents, because he started talking to the people next to him. So you either want to be in or you don't. So you've got to pick a lane.
Exactly. And also you could tell from the early, because there was an earlier scene, which I don't think we've got, but we may get later in the show, when he was inviting individual leaders up onto the stage, when he was talking, as he can do for hours on end. And he didn't get to Starmer until about number 37 or something like that. And he had 36 other world leaders in front of him, which tells you everything about his position in the world.
And Macron obviously couldn't be, didn't want to join that lineup.
No.
He's not shy of a photo op himself.
No.
So there's a reason why he probably thought, oh no, I've done my handshaky bit in the morning. That was a bit awkward. I'm not going to take it again. So I'm going to Scarpa. Whereas Starmer obviously felt, oh no, I need to be there. So
let's talk about this China crisis though, because yesterday in Parliament, and we'll play some of this a bit later on, Kemi Badenoch made a statement saying that she believes the government has misled the House, and she said, they need to tell us and come clean exactly what they did. But basically yesterday, Dan Jarvis, who's Labour's security minister, blames Jonathan Powell's deputy for the collapse of the Chinese spy case. This is the two men, Christopher Cash and Christopher Berry, who were being prosecuted by the Crown Prosecution Service for acting as spies for China. Jarvis now apparently says that it's all the fault of some poor, hapless civil servant called Matthew Collins, who's going to be thrown under the bus, who apparently was told to respond to the CPS, and nobody knew what he said.
Which I don't think people...
not really credible, is it?
Not really credible when you're dealing with something of such sensitivity and importance, where Parliament has been spied on. There have been people in there working in that building, which is why Sir Lindsay Hall, the Speaker, was outraged that, you know, as the guy that's supposed to be protecting the building, there are people who are bad actors or acting on behalf of a state that is a threat to the UK, which we've known for a long time.
Turns out they're bad actors in a bad Chinese movie.
Yeah, exactly. And so the idea that either Jonathan Powell, who is the National Security Advisor, but a political appointee who could easily be dismissed...
Who's also fighting for his life at the moment, isn't he? Because, you know, he may be on the old long finger at the moment, but, you know, he's going to walk the plank soon enough.
Totally. And this poor Matthew Collins, who is a civil servant, and so therefore not easily removed compared to a special advisor that can easily be dismissed, that's why I think the pressure is on to Matthew Collins. And the reason why it's important is people want to know what the minutes of the meetings were, so who was in the meetings where Matthew might have been coming up with this advice, and who saw the final bit of advice that went to the CPS. It is... I think, unbelievable that nobody else would have seen it before it went to the CPS, because if it had, and if other people had been, then there was perfect opportunity, A, for the National Security Advisor, and B, others to say, actually, why are we not saying that China is a threat? Why can't we just say that up? Because that is the position.
It's completely and utterly non-credible to have anybody think that a civil servant, without any political leanings and or responsibility, is going to reply to the CPS on behalf of the government about whether China is an enemy without asking anybody in the government. It's just not believable.
Exactly.
Sorry.
And the reason why it's so important is because, A, the trial collapsed, where you've got two people that have been spying on the UK and giving information to China, but B, because this government has he's gone cap in hand. I think Oliver Robbins, who's the Perm Sec at the Foreign Office, is on his way at the moment to China, because the UK economy is flatlined so much under this government. It needs any kind of business investment that it can take. It doesn't want to annoy...
The begging bowl is out. Absolutely right. Charlie, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Charlie Rowley there with his take on everything that happened yesterday, and of course the latest on this China scandal, which is getting bigger by the day. We've got James Hill from The Spectator coming next. Loads more after the news.
Do you think it's a racist policy?
Well, I do think that it's a racist policy. I do think it's immoral. It needs to be called out for what it is.
According to Keir Starmer, if you think young men that illegally cross the English Channel should be detained and deported, you're racist. In fact, if you even criticise any element of the immigration policies of the last two governments, you're racist. And yet the Home Secretary, Shubham Mahmood, tries to copy our policies.
Patriotism, a force for good, is turning into something smaller, something more like ethno-nationalism, which struggles to accept that someone who looks like me and has a faith like mine can truly be English or British.
Britain is being invaded. Thousands of fighting-age men from countries that despise Britain continue to arrive on our beaches. Our plan is the only appropriate response to a national security emergency. Immediate removal. Deportation is the ultimate deterrent.
Our flags flying proudly as we celebrate difference and oppose racism.
Labour says these policies are racist and immoral, and by implication, Reform supporters, Reform voters, Reform sympathisers are racist too. Yes, if you think we should control our borders, you are, by the definition of the Prime Minister and his cabinet, all racists.
We can all see that the country faces a choice, a defining choice. Britain stands at a fork in the road. We can choose decency, or we can choose division, renewal or decline.
To accuse countless millions of being racist is a very, very low blow. Why? Well, This language will incite and encourage the radical left. I'm thinking of Antifa and other organisations like that. It directly threatens the safety of our elected officials and our campaigners. And frankly, in the wake of the Charlie Kirk murder, I think this is an absolute disgrace.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. Coming up to 3 minutes past 7. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, until 10 o'clock. It is Tuesday the 14th of October, the morning after the night before. The celebrations that took place last night and yesterday in Israel were purely beautiful and joyous to witness. And we have to say it must be incredible for some of those hostages, 20 living hostages who were released yesterday back into the bosoms of their family. Imagine what it must be like for them waking up this morning for the first time in a proper bed, having slept probably in all sorts of dreadful, unkempt conditions underneath the streets of Gaza City. You know, tortured, raped in some cases, sexually assaulted, treated really like animals, you know, having all sorts of things taken away from them, like their freedom, like their ability to go out into the open air. Many of them won't have seen daylight for months and months and months and months, if at all. Many of them would have been there for the full length of time, the 737 days. Front page of The Sun this morning, freed from hell is what it says. After 737 days in captivity, 20 Israeli hostages home at last. Noah's hero is home. Astonishing, the Daily Mail can reveal he kept the fact that he's an Israeli Special Forces soldier secret from his Hamas captors for 738 days. This is a very touching story of the couple, Noah and Avinatan Or, who were separated on October the 7th, 2023. He was rushed off by two Hamas operatives. She was placed on the back of a motorcycle and she famously said, "Please don't kill me." They were reunited. Their pictures are on the front pages as well of the Times, along with Aylan Ohel and Eviata David. Just beautiful pictures and a beautiful story, really. 2 years of torment over as hostages reunited with families. Israel also freed 2,000 Palestinian prisoners, some of whom are terrorists, some of whom are murderers, some of whom are rapists. And, of course, Donald Trump says that he is going to hail the end of an age of terror and death. We're talking an awful lot this morning, though, about the humiliation of Keir Starmer, who is, of course, the Prime Minister of this great country of ours. He refers to this great country of ours quite often, but even he must be embarrassed at the way he was treated by Donald Trump, who first acknowledged him. He walks up to the podium. This is in front of leaders of the entire world. He obviously thinks he's going to get some kind of special treatment, but Trump basically just turns his back on him and he has to walk back with his back to the camera to his position, where he looks absolutely and utterly mortified. A more absolute slam dunk diplomatically I don't think I've ever seen, and quite well deserved as well. 0344 499 1000 is the number. Let's get a voice note from Bridget.
Morning, Mike. Great show. It's Bridget in France here. What a wonderful day yesterday was, seeing all those hostages being returned to their families. God bless them and a speedy recovery. It was absolutely wonderful to see how Trump took Starmer down, and Macron, actually. The people he mentioned he didn't like, I would say both of them are actually on that list.
Yeah. Bridget, thanks very much indeed. It is an extraordinary story and an extraordinary follow-up story today, because the Daily Telegraph says that Trump now wants to end the Ukraine war. Donald Trump is preparing to arm Ukraine with long-range Tomahawk missiles as he turns his attention to ending the war with Russia. Because you'd have to say, after what happened in Egypt at Sharm el-Sheikh, after all of the conversations that were had with regional countries in the Middle East, Qatar specifically, Turkey specifically, or Turkey error, as Keir Starmer calls it, and of course Qatar, He's now obviously thinking, I've found some kind of formula for bringing these horrible, ghastly people like Hamas to heel, and maybe we can do the same with Vladimir Putin. Lenny in the Elephant Castle says, Mike, great show as always. How much longer can Starmer get away with his blatant avoidance of doing any real work, constantly choosing to idle away working days on pointless trips abroad? How is he getting away with this while our country and living standards are on a daily decline? Well, while he's away, all we get is constant sort of reminders from Rachel Reeves that the economy will need to be somehow straightened out in November, and the 26th of November budget specifically, whether or not they're going to come after a wealth tax, whether they're going to try and do a one-off windfall tax on people with money or people with property or people with land, whether they're going to try and put pressure on private healthcare companies to pay up, whether they're going to put VAT up. You know, there's all manner of things going on, not to mention the China crisis, the latest development of which on the front page of the Daily Telegraph has Dan Jarvis, the Securities Minister, blaming Matthew Collins, who's a civil servant and the deputy of Jonathan Powell, the National Security Advisor. I mean, the whole thing stinks to high heaven. Let's talk to James Hill, who is Deputy Political Editor, of course, of The Spectator. James, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike.
So, you know, I think we're all agreed that Keir Starmer perhaps might be waking up this morning wishing he hadn't gone to Sharm el-Sheikh. I'm sure he'll say that he still wants to play a big part and he still thinks that it was worthwhile. But it didn't look good for him yesterday when Trump deliberately humiliated him.
No, it was a pretty toe-curling moment, wasn't it? And having them all there and then sort of dismissing him after 5 seconds when he called him up to the podium, I definitely think that was very much not the image that the Prime Minister wanted to convey of being a sort of, if not equal, then a certainly trusted and respected partner. And having them there against all the other world leaders, I think, just emphasised that far from having a special relationship, you know, I think the danger is that we often are just simply regarded as one of the European countries rather than being a genuinely distinct and interesting international player.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, clearly there was no love lost on this particular occasion. And Trump, we know, will not bear a grudge because he doesn't. But he wanted to teach him and Emmanuel Macron and Mark Carney a lesson. I think there was no doubt about that. We saw that when he made his speech in the Oval Office, thanking all the various different countries that had been involved in making this peace deal come together and actually convincing Hamas to at least give up all the hostages, if not lay down their arms. And so, similarly, when he was inviting people up, as we're seeing there with Emmanuel Macron onto the stage, he left it very late for the French and for the British and for the Canadians because he wanted to teach them a lesson. Because I think he would see the way that Keir Starmer decided to grant the Palestinian state recognition, like literally a few hours after Donald Trump had left Britain, he would see as kind of weasel-like behaviour, wouldn't he?
Yeah, and also I think the Americans have been very clear, not just Trump, people like Rubio, Witkoff, etc., that Palestinian state recognition would not be a good move. They think it undermined the Israeli and the American negotiating stance, and their argument is that actually it would be rewarding terror. And so I think that's been their line throughout the whole conflict. And so very much they wanted to show that as they would see it, giving into these demands doesn't actually go any way towards securing peace. So I think it was very much laying down a marker. And I think really it's hard to argue anything other than the US was the one who made the shots on this. So although we can have a discussion about whether the UK had any role in the conflict, I do think that we certainly didn't play the key role that some in the government would like us to claim.
No, exactly right. Just a bit of breaking news for you, James. The rate of UK unemployment rose to 4.8% in the 3 months to August, up from 4.7% in the 3 months to July. All of these little rises and falls of various different, you know, economic statistics are sort of, I suppose you might call them piecemeal, but they all kind of add up to the same thing. You know, unemployment is rising. Growth is falling, and the economy is kind of flatlining perhaps more now than it ever was.
Yeah, totally, and it plays into a couple of different narratives. One, of course, is the impact of that Labour national insurance rise last year, what that's done to jobs and confidence in the economy, and also, of course, it comes at a time when the welfare bill is spiralling to some fear out of control. And so as a result of that, I mean, more people are unemployed, but actually the amount of people claiming on benefits is going up and up and up. So I think it's a worrying sign for our economy. Not a huge jump in unemployment, as you say, Mike, but definitely not the kind of rosy picture that Rachel Reeves is looking for as we enter 6 weeks ahead of her budget.
Well, you know what they would say if it was the other direction. You know, if it was going down, they'd say unemployment's, you know, coming down under us. We've got the economy under control. We're doing things. We're pulling all the levers to make it work. The other figure we've got this morning is average regular earnings growth fell to 4.7% in the 3 months to August. Again, falling when it should be at least rising, because they'd be then giving us something to cheer about. But you know, with all of the various, you know, rumours flying around from the Treasury at the moment, there's no doubt that she is going to pull some kind of lever, which probably won't work, but will be in some way painful for people that she perceives to be well off.
Yes, totally. I think that she's basically scrubbing around looking for any sort of way to fill the fiscal black hole, and it's going to be those who are perceived to have done well for themselves who are going to bear the brunt of any likely tax rises.
Exactly. Meanwhile, a couple of stats for you. It turns out that something like 1,843 illegal migrants have entered the UK via dinghies in the past 4 days, which will knock the numbers up to well over 50-odd thousand since Keir Starmer got in, and probably well over 36,000 since the start of this year. I think they've now returned about 26 people to France. So again, another failed policy, another failed attempt to stop the boats.
Yeah, totally. I mean, this is going to be one of the big things. I mean, it's extraordinary. We have Labour MPs crowing over the fact that we might just miss the 2022 high of small boats arrivals. Clearly, overall, I think even at the top of government, they would admit much more needs to be done over the next 12, 18 months or so. Otherwise, we're going to have exactly the same scenes as we did last year. Obviously, with the small boats crisis, it tends to be seasonal. We tend to get many more arrivals between about the spring and the late autumn. So you maybe won't see just as many as we have done over the sort of summer months when reform had that surge, but that doesn't mean the problem has gone away. And given all the incentives, the pull factors, I think we're very likely to see lots of arrivals come next April, May.
Oh yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about that. And it's all about the weather now, I suppose, between now and the spring, isn't it? But let's talk a little bit about what happened yesterday in Parliament, because while Keir Starmer was away, conveniently, he wasn't there to answer questions about the latest on this China spy case. Let's see what Kemi Badenoch had to say.
2 men have been accused of spying on MPs in this very building. The CPS had what it felt was a clear and compelling case to prosecute. But the trial has collapsed because for months and months, the government has been refusing to give the CPS vital information. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This looks like a deliberate decision to collapse the case and curry favour with the regime in China.
I mean, it's funny, isn't it, that here we have Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, a former head of the Crown Prosecution Service, apparently running a government which stands accused, anyway, even if it turns out not to be true, of collapsing a criminal case brought by the Crown Prosecution Service against 2 men who have been accused of spying for China inside the Houses of Parliament. And I mean, can you imagine if one of us had written a piece in some kind of contempt of court somewhere, which would have collapsed the case? Can you imagine all hell would have broken loose?
Oh yeah, and the government would have come down on us like a ton of bricks. I mean, I've spoken to Tory MPs who are very, very suspicious about all of this. I mean, I think the CPS had the case for 4 months and the government didn't provide the evidence.
No.
So, I mean, that is extremely suspicious given the seriousness of these allegations. So I think it's no surprise that in both the Commons and the Lords yesterday, people were raising the prospects of the fact that maybe this Deputy National Security Advisor has been put forward as something of a scapegoat.
Yes.
Massive questions unanswered. And it was a bombshell letter, Mike, a fortnight ago by Stephen Parkinson, who basically completely ridiculed the government's case. And lots of questions remain unanswered as we approach another day in Parliament today.
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, I don't know whether you know if Keir Starmer's going to be there today. I presume he's going to try and avoid it if he can. And maybe they'll put up the hapless David Lammy to try and answer some questions. But yeah, I mean, the idea that Dan Jarvis says that it's all the fault of this guy Matthew Collins, who's a Deputy National Security Advisor, but a sort of paid-for civil servant, so he's not in any way affiliated with this Labour government. But we're supposed to be asked to believe the fact that this guy, Matthew Collins, directly dealt with the CPS. He was not in any way answerable to his boss, who is, of course, Jonathan Powell, the National Security Advisor, who's currently under pressure. National Security Advisor Powell didn't see anything that he wrote to the CPS, didn't ask him anything about what he wrote to the CPS, about whether China was an enemy or a friend. And we're supposed to believe that nobody else in Downing Street knew anything about this apart from this one character, Matthew Collins. I mean, it's simply not believable, is it?
Well, I think that if Jonathan Powell did know anything, as some of his critics allege, and he is a very astute Whitehall operator, so I will be interested to see whether, if he did do anything, if it was written down, as opposed to any kind of verbal instructions or things that will never make any appearance in paper trails. So, look, at the moment, they're just allegations, but I think it'll be very interesting to see in the fullness of time whether more details emerge about this fact.
Yeah, I mean, this is becoming very much an MO of the government as well, isn't it? Because the Sunday Times spoke about this at the weekend, that they've asked on numerous occasions questions of Downing Street, not just on this story, but on other stories as well. Like they did it on the Donkeygate story as well. And Downing Street simply just don't answer the questions. They just kind of stonewall and hope that it goes away.
Precisely, and that's there's two elements to that, Mike. One of which is about a media strategy and the refusal to engage. Well, we've seen where that ends previous administrations. And second, specifically on foreign policy, I mean, for me, there are real echoes of the Chagos Islands debacle. I still don't think, a year on, we've had proper answers on any of that.
And that was another Jonathan Powell operation, wasn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. And so he's the National Security Advisor. He's basically running foreign policy from number 10. And I think there are some real questions, and particularly China, you know, given how we've all praised, well, some of us have praised Keir Starmer for having quite a, initially at least, a good relationship with Trump and some of the stuff on the West and standing strong on Ukraine. It's so odd then to have this very sort of confused policy, this stance towards China. And we really haven't had much in the way of explanation, and all the promises we had in opposition about the China audit being published, about recognising the Uyghur genocide, all of that's gone out the window. So it's... I think there's a lot of questions being answered about the relationship between the government and China.
Yeah, no question at all, particularly surrounding the appointment of a group of people to give a green light, it would appear, to the super embassy that China wants to build on the other side of the Thames here. Let's have a quick look at what Dan Jarvis said yesterday.
That suggestions that the government concealed evidence, withdrew witnesses, or restricted the ability of witnesses to draw on particular bits of evidence are all untrue.
Well, that's a bold statement. I hope we don't have to play that back in a couple of weeks' time.
Yeah, I mean, certainly. I mean, remember, of course, it was the middle of last month when Dan Jarvis came to the House and suggested the government had no idea why the trial was collapsed. And then from the CPS's letter, it would certainly seem that they ought to have had a pretty good idea, which is that they refused to play ball in providing important things that the CPS needed to proceed with that prosecution. So Dan Jarvis has made this speech a month after the last one. We'll wait to see if more sort of questions will be put down, but I suspect this is not the last time he'll answer questions on it. And given how unsatisfactory the government's been to date on this subject, I suspect he's going to end with some people in government, at least, emerging pretty red-faced.
Yes, I think so, and possibly without jobs as well. We shall see. James, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. James Heal there, Deputy Political Editor at The Spectator. Very much more fire put under Keir Starmer's Prime Ministership. Certainly Jonathan Powell is in the firing line, as is still Morgan McSweeney, whose name has disappeared from the front pages for a while, but is not far from being in quite a lot of trouble. People have said that he's already started to kind of dismantle his own job and that he doesn't now even appear at an awful lot of the meetings that he used to run. And so it would be clear to me, as we said a few weeks ago, that Morgan McSweeney will probably be out on his ear sometime between now and Budget Day, if not the day after Budget Day, because the whole project has basically fallen apart. And the other guy who's in the firing line, as I said, Jonathan Powell, the National Security Advisor, who has done a series of idiotic things while he's been in power, and he can't last. Simple as that. 0344 499 1000. Let's get a voice note from Len.
Yeah, I was watching Trump's speech live on Jez's programme yesterday afternoon, and honestly, I was rolling around on the floor laughing. I mean, normally you wouldn't want an American president making your prime minister look as stupid as he did, but after recognising Palestine as a state, he deserved all he got yesterday. He keeps digging these holes for himself, and he's never going to get out of any of them. And good luck to us, because Donald Trump is finally showing the world what Starmer really is. He looked like a fish out of water yesterday, and it was hilarious. Keep up with the good work, Mike.
Absolutely no question at all, Len. He was a fish out of water. He was completely and utterly irrelevant on the world stage, and it was there clearly for everybody to see. And what Trump did so brilliantly was he humiliated him. He singled him out for it, you know. He called him over. He knew that Starmer would think he was in with some kind of a chance of being his busy mate. And, of course, he fell for it. And unfortunately then was made to look like a complete and utter plonker. Rodney, this is Talk.
United Kingdom. Where's United Kingdom?
Behind you.
Where?
Oh, I'm here. Oh, there you are.
Very good.
Oh, stick kids coming forward.
People all came in like 20-minute notice.
Oh, he's come up to speak and Trump sent him away.
Others, and just so many others. And it's such a compliment to what we're doing.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 25 minutes past 7. I'm Mike Gray with you all the way through, of course, until 10 o'clock. It is a Tuesday, the 14th of October. We've got Jake Wallace-Simons coming up in a moment to talk about yesterday's incredible day in Israel when the hostages, all 20 living hostages, were released. Bit of breaking news for you, though. The rate of UK unemployment rose to 4.8% in the 3 months to August, up from 4.7% in the 3 months to July. Also, UK average regular earnings growth fell 4.7%. In the 3 months to August, fell to 4.7%. Jamie Jenkins has tweeted about this, our favourite statistician. He says, the breaking news, 11 of the last 15 months have seen payroll job losses. Since Labour took office, 123,000 fewer people are on the payroll. Private sector jobs are down, while government hiring and borrowing keeps rising. Labour's jobs tax is making making things more expensive, which means people are cutting. Businesses are cutting the numbers of people employed. Let's just remind ourselves of how Keir Starmer was so sure that Rachel Reeves was a great choice for Chancellor.
How do you really comfort people on tax? Because that is the biggest challenge to any Labour government. You can't manage the economy.
It's one of the reasons I appointed Rachel Reeves to the role of Chancellor, because she's obviously got Bank of England experience and she's got sort of iron rules as Rachel. She will not sign off anything unless it's fully costed and fully funded. Tax levels now are the highest for 70 years, so we can't just go and pull the tax lever. That's why we've said no increase in income tax, in national insurance or VAT. You've got to show, I understand, it really matters.
I mean, it's just delusional, isn't it? That's why we're not going to pull the tax lever. Well, that's all they've done. And that's why we're not going to put up national insurance. Well, you've done it. Well, that's why we're not going to put up VAT. You're about to do that. Just hopeless. And of course, they also ran, standing next to him, Gary Neville, walking in the woods with him for some reason. Nobody knows why. Let's talk to Jake Wallace-Simons, author of Never Again, How the West Betrayed the Jews and Itself. Some of the images from yesterday were so wonderful to see. Obviously, an awful lot of healing that needs to be done, but a fantastic day, orchestrated, of course, and managed and organised by Donald J. Trump. Nothing to do with Keir Starmer, who was humiliated on the world stage. Jake, very good morning to you.
Good morning, good morning.
A great day yesterday. I think we all felt somehow a mixture of emotions because, of course, we still wait for other families to see whether or not they get the return of their relatives who have previously died in captivity. But a fascinating day. I was saying this morning, it must be quite incredible for some of the hostages to wake up this morning in a sort of a clean bed for the first time in 737 days, surrounded by loved ones. They must be waking up thinking it's all a dream.
Yeah, there's a lot of psychological work that needs to go into supporting these people as they make this huge adaptation back to normal life. I think that, as far as I understand it, Israeli experts have learned quite a lot. They've had quite a few hostages going through that journey, that wonderful journey, but a difficult journey also in recent months and over the past couple of years. Only recently, a former victim of somebody who was in the Nova Festival attack committed suicide. So it's a very real and difficult challenge to cope with. And yeah, I mean, aside from that, without wishing to downplay the scale of the challenge, it's a wonderful day. You know, one of the things that Israeli society has that we seem to have lost to a large extent is a sense of the whole nation being one family. And I think that really explains the scenes of widespread jubilation across the country, not just the families themselves, but everybody felt invested in these people. And now they're finally back. You know, up until now, there's a sense of unfinished business, of trauma that the whole country's been going through. Now they're back. Finally, it can begin to heal.
Yeah, I think so. Let's have a look at Donald Trump talking about his personality.
I remember Hillary Clinton during a debate, she said, look at him, he's going to go to war with everybody. And actually, she said, he's got a personality that's all about war. No, and my personality actually is all about stopping wars, and it seems to work. Seems to work.
And, you know, if it wasn't for Donald Trump, it probably wouldn't have happened.
I mean, this whole thing has been a result of the Trump whirlwind sweeping into the Middle East and carrying all the leaders up into this sense that actually we can do this, that freeing the hostages was always the right thing to focus on. And now finally, the Arab world in particular has been united by the force of Trump's personality. Of course, big questions remain about how the next stages of the deal are going to work. The devil will be in the detail. But for now, it just reminded me of, you know, a father coming home and saying, look, kids, tidy your rooms up. It's been like this for long enough. And, you know, Mark Rutte, of course, the NATO chief, previously referred to Trump as daddy in a humiliating message a few months ago. But there was that sense of, you know, these kids lining up on the stage saying, OK, fine, we'll actually do the right thing and get Hamas to release the hostages. It's extraordinary.
Yeah, really. And one thing that was also very clear yesterday was what disdain Keir Starmer and the British government are held in, not only by Donald Trump, but also by the Israeli government.
Yeah, I mean, you know, from the Manchester attacks onwards, all we've wanted from Keir Starmer is just to keep his mouth shut.
Yeah.
Just don't say anything. It's clear that you've messed this up royally. You've humiliated Britain on the world stage by having Hamas celebrate celebrate your foreign policy one week and then celebrate the attack that you're trying to lament the next. And then suddenly, you know, the cherry on the cake came when British officials from Bridget Phillipson downwards tried to claim credit for Trump's deal, only to be slapped down by the Americans who called them delusional.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just abject humiliation, not just for him. I mean, it's quite funny, you know, to see Keir Starmer, a bit of schadenfreude from the viewing public, I think, but he's humiliating Britain as well.
Yeah. He really is, and that is the tragedy of it. I mean, nobody in this country, I think, wants to see our Prime Minister being humiliated, but because it's Keir Starmer and he's so unpopular, we quite like watching him squirm. But, I mean, as a nation, we should be embarrassed by it.
Exactly. I mean, Britain should have stood shoulder to shoulder with the US, insisting that Hamas are the bad guys, not Israel, the liberal democracy trying to defend its people. Hamas need to surrender. Hamas need to release the hostages, and nothing will be given to the Palestinians until that happens. That should have been, it's obvious that should have been our position. And yet we kowtowed to the propaganda, to various special interest voting groups in our country, and it led to the abject, you know, abysmal humiliation of us recognizing a Palestinian state without demanding that Hamas surrenders, emboldening Hamas to reject the deal at the time and prolong the war. We've only contributed towards extending this war, whereas Donald Trump has stopped it. And now Keir Starmer is being humiliated, trying to claim the credit for something that he actually worked against.
Yeah, it is extraordinary. But there we are. Jake, great to see you. Thank you very much indeed. It's a great week for everybody who believes in democracy and goodness, I think. Jake Wallace-Simons there, author of Never Again, How the West Betrayed the Jews and Israel, the Jews and itself, rather. Mike, on the Starmer awkward moment on stage, Trump kept him squirming till near the end. Then when Trump said, "Where's the UK?" Stalin gingerly put his hand up, said Mark from Somerset. Lenny in Elephant and Castle, I think we've seen that one. Let's do Margaret. She says, "Hi, Mike. Some great compliments paid yesterday for this great president. Colossus, strength of character, global leadership." And Bibi said, "We need more Trumps. So say all of us, Mr. President. We salute you." I think a lot of people would go along with that. Let's talk now to Alex Burkhardt, MP, Shadow Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, Tory MP, of course. Alex, very good morning to you.
Morning, mate. Thanks for having me on.
Not at all. Because it was all rather overshadowed by events in the Middle East and by Keir Starmer's absence yesterday, I think it's important to note that Kemi Badenoch did actually rattle the cage of the Labour government, asking quite a few awkward questions about what on earth has been going on between the CPS, the National Security Advisor's Office and China.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, Kemi, sort of fresh back from that barnstorming speech in Manchester, was in the Commons holding the government to account on this very odd and worrying story about the people who appear to have spied for China. And so there were these two English guys who were arrested for accused of spying, and the CPS, who determines whether prosecutions will happen, asked the government to hand over information so that they could proceed with the trial, and the government didn't do that, and now the trial's been abandoned. And this is just obviously a terrible miscarriage of justice. The government won't tell us why it didn't hand over that information, hiding behind all sorts of peculiar process, but it doesn't have any key answers to the main questions. And as every day goes on, this looks more and more like a serious cover-up with national security implications, particularly for people who work in Parliament. Because yeah, if foreign spies feel that they can just walk into Parliament and start stealing secrets from MPs without getting prosecuted, where's this going to end?
Well, quite. We're supposed to be asked to believe now by Dan Jarvis, the Security Minister, that Matthew Collins, a man that we previously haven't heard of, Deputy National Security Advisor and civil servant, was given sole responsibility for dealing with the Crown Prosecution Service without any reference to his boss, Jonathan Powell, without any reference to Downing Street at all, without any reference to any press organisation whatsoever. And he's now being blamed for it all going horribly wrong. I'm not buying that.
Yeah, this is this is very peculiar, isn't it? As you say, Mike, the idea that this major case, the big public profile already, which is affecting people, MPs working in Parliament, would not have been dealt with by any politician at all. I find that very, very difficult to accept, and it looks increasingly like Mr. Collins, the Deputy National Security Advisor, is just being thrown under the bus by the government, who are trying to take fire away from Jonathan Powell, who's of course an old associate and friend of Tony Blair's, and the Prime Minister himself, who has a personal responsibility when it comes to national security.
Yes. And are you expecting to see the Prime Minister in Parliament anytime soon? I presume he's back now, is he?
Yeah, well, I'd very much hope that he'll come and give a statement on the Middle East today. I know that he's been in Egypt, but traditionally, after a major summit like this, Prime Minister would come straight to Parliament and answer questions, so very much hope he's going to do that.
Right. And then, presumably, you will be around to do Prime Minister's questions tomorrow. Yeah,
I mean, I hope so. I hope he's not flying off anywhere tomorrow in order to avoid being put under the spotlight. But there are a lot of things flying around at the moment. It's not just it's not just the spy case, although that's very, very serious. It's the fact that we've got the new employment figures out today, which shows that unemployment has risen again under this government. It's gone up by about a fifth since the general election, and we all know why. It's because Labour have come in and they put on the highest taxes on business and employment that we've seen in this country for 50 years, and businesses doing what they have to do. They're retrenching, and that means that they're not hiring. And I was speaking at a university last week, and all the students, they're bright young men and women, they're very worried about their futures. They're very worried about the fact that there aren't any job prospects out there for them when they graduate. So I know just a lot of people are very angry, and it's clear that the Chancellor isn't going to get us out of this mess next month when she comes to her budget. She's going to make things worse. She's already hinted that she's going to put taxes up again. That's going to lead to the economy growing less or going into recession, and we're all going to be poorer as a result.
That's, I'm afraid, the only conclusion that we can come to. Alex, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Alex Burghardt, MP, Shadow Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster there, pointing out the rate of UK unemployment rose 4.8%. So it's up. 123,000 people fewer on payroll since Labour government got in. 123,000 jobs. That's an awful lot of jobs, I'm afraid. 7:38. Connie Shaw coming next from the Free Speech Union.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 7:41. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, until 10 o'clock. It's Tuesday, the 14th of October. Morning Glory podcast out any time after about 10:15, 10:30 every single weekday morning. Right now, we're joined by Connie Shaw from the Free Speech Union. Connie, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike.
Good to see you. We're here to talk about an amazing story from Scotland, actually, which has been going around for a little while. It's Reform Councillor Claire Mackey-Brown getting herself apparently into hot water by saying she was born and bred in Falkirk. Have a look at this.
People don't want answers about the local white boy who's done this that you are unaware of.
Because it's not known. If I don't know about it, how am I supposed to have an opinion on it or be able to ask questions? I don't have an answer to that. I'm trying my hardest to bring community cohesion. I've been overwhelmed with the contacts I've had from people within Falkirk. And, you know, there is a true unrest and it's scary. It's scary as a local resident, somebody who's born and bred here. I shouldn't have said that.
Well, do you see why this is? People sometimes think that Reform are very much against having people here.
It just came out just...
That's unfortunate for you, I guess, but ultimately, do you see why people who aren't from here, who have maybe made their home here, are annoyed when they hear an elected official say that people are born and bred here?
Yeah, well, like people from Northern Ireland maybe have come to Falkirk to work for the BBC. I mean, why is she even embarrassed by saying that? I shouldn't have said that.
Well, we live in a culture of self-censorship, and her almost wanting to retract it, saying she wished she hadn't said it, it's almost foreboding about the fact she was then reported to the police. And obviously we don't know by who, but it seems to be a cultural thing now where if you see someone or hear someone say something that you don't like, that people think that they have the right to report them to the police. Now, the police have been very quick and said that there's no criminality to be found here, but it seems as though the police actually looked into it. You know, as soon as they see something like that, you know that there's no criminality. It's similar with Deborah Anderson. The fact that the police officers had to go to her house, even though they knew that she hadn't broken the law, because otherwise she would have been arrested. They had seen on social media what Deborah Anderson, by the way, the American citizen who had the police officer come to her house. The one who was suffering from
cancer. And when they went there, they said to her, "You haven't broken the law." It's like, well, why are you here then?
Yes, exactly. So it's why the police even have to say there's no criminality. Well, we all knew that.
Yeah.
But it's just outrageous. And, you know, the FSU were on standby for Claire in case she needed to take any legal action, and we're still there supporting her just in case anything else happens. But yeah, absolutely outrageous. It's another case of people not being able to talk about facts.
Right. Well, it became a thing, didn't it, on social media, people saying, I was born and bred here. You know, it's just sort of people started reacting to it. Because I think the insidious bit about it as well is that people can complain to the police anonymously, so you never get to find out who it is that's complained, even if you're the subject of an investigation. And you have no right, apparently, to ask who's complained. Is that right?
Yeah, well, sometimes you never hear who the complainant was. I don't know whether, you know, they have to protect the anonymity of some people in these cases. But that's certainly the case. I mean, look at when Graham Linehan was arrested. I mean, he had a suspicion straight away who had reported him. But you're not told upon arrest or when the police come to your house who it is. Sometimes you don't even get told what the comment was. The same with Deborah Anderson. She never knew what it... We still don't know what it was that the police had seen on social media for them to come to her house. They've now claimed that they accidentally deleted the record of it. So it's this extraordinary culture within the police, and it seems to have corrupted all of our institutions.
It's very weird, isn't it? And it's as you say, and it may well be that the police are smart enough not to go ahead and proceed with it, but that depends on the sort of the good officers of the police,
and
doesn't it?
Whether it has a large social media attention to it as well. The police were very quick to come out on social media and say that no criminality had been found, but of course we have 30 people a day being arrested for just 2 speech offences, so the actual number is probably much higher. That's just two offences under our laws, and we don't hear about all of them in the press. I think lots of people think that some of our cases at the FSU, you only hear about them because they're so rare and so shocking that they get into the press. No, absolutely not. We don't. Most of these cases we never hear about.
No, of course. I mean, we remember when we were talking first of all about the Bell Hotel in Epping, and it turned out that in Essex, something like you know, at least one, sometimes 1.5 people, I know that's just a weird statistic, are getting questioned and getting arrested by the police over hate speech. You know, and that's going on every single day.
Yes, I know, it's outrageous, and hopefully there will be a reckoning coming soon for the police, because we cannot continue like this. You know, it used to be that you can't talk about, you know, the reality of biological sex, and it's very quickly shifted to talking about the reality of the makeup in the UK. I mean, look at the reaction to Robert Jenrick talking about the lack of integration when he went to Birmingham. And this other story about this reform head teacher.
Yeah, what's this one about?
This head teacher who supports reform, the local Labour Party in the area, saying that she's a safeguarding risk to the school, which is insane. I mean, it's this cultural thing of reporting people for political opinions you don't like seems to have corrupted the Labour Party, our own government. Look at David Lammy calling Reform and Nigel Farage basically Nazis for being somehow associated with Hitler Youth, and it's the same thing with how low do they have to stoop? It's just simply outrageous,
and it has a corrosive effect on society. We saw that young leader of the council in Nuneaton getting attacked at the weekend. Nigel Farage says as a direct result of some of the speech rhetoric from Labour Party conference, from what Keir Starmer said, from what David Lammy said about reform. People get crazed.
It's also a really weird tactic, because we've already seen, straight after David Lammy made those comments, Reform surged in the polls once again. The more you try and shut people down for their perfectly legitimate concerns and opinions, the more those people want to hold them, because they're not even trying to hide it, the way they're going for people, for having different views to them. They know that reform is a threat. I mean, look, the whole of the Labour Party conference was about Nigel Farage. The more that they talk people down and shame them for being fans of a political threat to Labour, then the more they want to do that. It's just such a weird tactic. Why would you want to do that? I mean, look at Kemi Badenoch. She didn't even really mention Nigel Farage. She didn't really mention reform in the way that Labour did. And she did excellently. No one expected it. It was astonishing how amazing that speech was. And journalists couldn't believe it. It works when you don't talk about these people, and that's just the political side of it. But I don't understand why people think that continuing to shame people for liking reform or for not being Labour or the hard left will do anything in their own favour.
Yeah, I think a part of it, though, is that they're slightly, getting desperate because they don't know how to stop the popularity. So they're lashing out and doing anything they can, whether it's complaining to the police or whether it's, shouting in the street, whether it's throwing bricks through windows. They don't know how to stop them because they don't understand why people like them.
It's incredible how, you're right, they don't understand why people like them, and it's incredible how they can't understand it. Just take a look at yourself, Keir Starmer. Just listen to people, and it's only been just over a year, and it's just been such a disaster. But their tactic is not to improve themselves, but then they accuse Nigel Farage from going across the pond and talking the country down. If you raise any issues with the country, which there are many, that something needs to happen in the way that this country is being run, whether it's immigration or the economy or anything else, and you get shamed for telling tales on the UK. What are we meant to do? Just be quiet?
Well, it's ridiculous, because Keir Starmer spent his entire time as leader of the opposition, in his words, talking down Britain, which wasn't talking down Britain, it was just being critical of the Tory government. If you're being critical of the government, it's not talking down the country, and you can't start making those kind of, similes. It doesn't work, and people see right through it. But there we are. Thankfully, the police haven't investigated, or they have, and they've decided not to do anything about this woman. But, the worst thing as well is for her to say, oh, I shouldn't have said that. Well, why not?
I know, and then for the journalist to then say, do you understand now why people are uncomfortable with reform being here? It's just extraordinary. It's just the hammering is from all sides. And if the institutions in this country, particularly journalists, don't start listening to people's actual concerns, then this is just going to continue. The very people who want to stop this are making it worse for themselves.
But the journalists all come out the same box now. That's the problem. They all come from these little privileged backgrounds. They think that they know best, and that's not their job to do anything other than report the news. They shouldn't be giving their view of whether or not somebody is a suitable candidate for election. That's my job. I get to do that. Anyway, Connie, good to see you. Connie Shaw from the Free Speech Union, a fine organisation, constantly fighting the good fight for people who find themselves in these ludicrous situations, being reported to the police for something they thought or said. It's madness. It's coming up to 7:50. We'll talk about Sadiq Khan next.
disgrace and a scandal. He seems to be following the playbook of his friends in the Chinese Communist Party right now. This for him is all about state control. Britain is a very free country. We don't believe in having our liberties encroached upon in this particular way, and I think it's an absolute terrible idea.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham. There's still more clips of Starmer. There's another one I'm just looking at here, which has been put out on social media, where Trump's talking to Mark Carney from Canada. Starmer's just kind of hanging around. He tries to keep butting in and just doesn't get seen, gets ignored. Absolutely incredible stuff. Alex Wilson's here from UK's London Assembly member. Alex, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike.
Good to see you. I tweeted out last night, actually, that, and I don't think it's changed, Sadiq Khan seems to have unwisely still not actually tweeted anything about the release of the hostages in Israel, not tweeted anything about the peace deal from Trump, and not tweeted anything about even the return of the Palestinian prisoners. He also won't condemn the pro-Palestine marches, and he claims that From the River to the Sea is not anti-Semitic. He's not having a great week, is he?
Yeah, well, I've not checked his Twitter feed, so I can't confirm whether or not he has done anything this morning. But no, last week we had a discussion, however you choose to describe it, at Mayor's Question Time about this very issue, the chanting, the marches, whether or not they constitute hate marches or whether it's peaceful protest. Yeah. Susan Hall, Conservative Assembly member, and myself, we both challenged him very, very robustly indeed. And he hides behind this notion that, oh no, it's all about context. It's not about anti-Semitism. Yeah, calling for the... Yeah, we know what River to the Sea means. Yeah. We know what globalise the Intifada means. It means kill all Jews. It means wipe Israel off the map. We know that. You know that. Susan knows that. And I think deep down in his heart, Sadiq probably knows that as well, but he refuses to admit it. You know, you can query the reasons why, but basically we've had this situation going on for over 2 years in London, on London streets, where you have these people chanting these outrageous things. They're not motivated by humanitarian concerns. If they were, they wouldn't have been protesting at the weekend just gone. Now we have a ceasefire. If ceasefire was what they wanted, you know, this would no longer need to be going on in the way that it is. But no, they're still protesting. They're still chanting these outrageous, hateful slurs, talking about genocide, actually wanting genocide of a different kind. It's got to stop.
It really has. And here's Susan Hall actually asking Sadiq Khan what he's going to do about it.
Do you think to scream from the river to the sea, which they're doing during these hate marches, is appropriate? Do you think it is anti-Semitic?
OK, I don't think it's anti-Semitic, and I think it's all about context. I couldn't have been clearer in my remarks in relation to my concern about the fear, the increased fear Jewish Londoners and Jewish people across the globe are feeling. I've gone out of my way since October the 7th, 2023, to reassure Jewish Londoners and Jewish people across the country and across the...
But they don't feel reassured. How can they feel reassured? I tell you what, I'll finish here because you will not do anything about this, and shame on you, because our Jewish community need looking after, and as Mayor of London, you are not doing that.
I mean, surely if he had any feelings at all for the Jewish community in this country, he would be talking in some way, shape or form, I've just checked his Twitter again, about the release of the hostages and the end of the war. Surely he should be calling for the people who are still protesting to give it up.
Absolutely. I mean, we should all be very pleased that so far the ceasefire is holding, the hostages have been released, and hopefully, we don't want to get too ahead of ourselves, but hopefully we can see a peaceful resolution to this that can move forward into the longer term. But absolutely, we should be celebrating the release of the hostages. They've been in those conditions, unimaginable conditions, for 2 years. Only 20 of them, of the remaining hostages, have now returned alive, none of them female. That tells you everything you need to know about how Hamas have treated these people over the last 2 years. It's absolutely disgusting. And President Trump should be applauded for the role that he's played in making this happen. Biden couldn't have done this. Starmer pretends to have had a role in it. Absolute nonsense. The British government, the Canadian government, the French government, who made this worse by prematurely recognising a Palestinian state. It's Trump that's done this. He needs to be applauded for that. And that's another thing that Khan will never do. He'll never praise Trump for anything, just as he'll never work with reform with anything. He's fixated, he's blinded by ideology rather than what's practically best for people, whether that's in London, in Israel, in Gaza, anywhere in the world.
I know, it's absolutely shocking and shameful, in fact, that the mayor of this town, this city, can behave in the way that he does. Alex, keep holding you to account. Thank you very much indeed. Alex Wilson there, Reform UK's London Assembly member. On more disappointment for the mayor of London, who doesn't seem to think that chanting from the river to the sea is in any way anti-Semitic. It's certainly nothing to do with hate, even though everybody knows what it means. It means the destruction, the abolition, the wiping away off the map of the State of Israel. It's really quite simple. He should be talking about how the war is over. He should be talking about supporting the peace. He should be talking about why these marches need to stop because there is no longer any need for them. But he won't. Zarina says she stated a fact. She was born and bred in Falkirk. It does not mean that she wants to make matters worse in her town. I feel very sorry that she is not allowed to state a fact. Morning Mike says Mary in Colchester. Starmer on the podium looked like he was waiting to be picked for the school hockey team. All the other nations sniggering, and that fantastic cold shoulder from Captain Trump. That's one trip he should regret taking. He won't, because he's such a desperate egomaniac. The man has no shame. It's true enough. Coming back after the news.
Libya has become a major transit route for refugees and migrants from sub-Saharan Africa, and many of them come through Libya dreaming of getting to the UK, particularly from Sudan, where there has been a civil war waging for the last 2 years. And those asylum seekers or economic migrants who make it from Sudan to the UK have a 99% chance of being given leave to remain. So I spent several hours talking to immigration chiefs here in Benghazi on the east side of Libya. The Libyan National Army has a very good grip on the immigration problem, albeit fighting against a huge crisis with limited resources. There is a very, very clear process of giving people proper health checks, the life-saving care that they need, and then working out where it is exactly that they've come from. Their message to the UK is that you are fueling this problem. You are effectively advertising a great new life for people from sub-Saharan Africa. They actually said, what do you think happens when a guy from Sudan comes up through Libya and makes his way all the way to the UK and gets put in a luxurious hotel and provided with everything? And make no mistake, it is a perilous journey. We see it from the end point. We see the channel crossing as the dangerous bit. But actually where these journeys begin is in the hot desert. Many, many tens of kilometres have to be covered on foot by these migrants. And as many as 1 in 4 do not make it. That means bodies in the desert. The Libyan authorities are having to recover bodies in the desert. About the UK and how much awareness. Please understand the scale of what we are dealing with here with very, very limited resources. Once again, people come in from charities, from NGOs, they use warm words, and the authorities here told me the only thing that we ever get is maybe a few toothbrushes and some nappies for the babies.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. Coming up to 3 minutes past 8. It's Tuesday the 14th of October. It's the day after the release of the remaining 20 living hostages yesterday in Gaza. It was a thing of great beauty to watch. Israel as a country was united in Hostage Square in Tel Aviv. They were absolutely beside themselves with joy, slightly tinged with sadness, of course, as well, because for everyone in Israel, somebody they know was affected by the dreadful events of October the 7th, 2023. You can see pictures there of Israel saying thank you, not least to Donald Trump, the 47th President of the United States of America, who flew in on Air Force One into Tel Aviv yesterday to Ben Gurion Airport. He then went to speak at the Knesset in Jerusalem, and he made the day very much a day of its celebration and a day of congratulation, to a large extent to himself, but that was all very well. One of the things he also did, though, was to amass a huge number of world leaders, all of whom who came more or less to pay homage at the court of King Trump, because that's kind of what it looked like. He had people from the Middle East, the big countries that were very important in the deal being signed, Qatar, obviously with a great deal of influence over Hamas, Turkey, similarly, and Egypt. Those three major Arab countries did so much to make sure that the peace deal got over the line, to convince Hamas to put down their arms for the moment in a ceasefire and to hand back all the hostages, something that many people never thought they would ever see. I spoke to relatives yesterday and they feared they would never see the day. If you imagine what it must be like for some of those hostages this morning, waking up in a clean bed, in a family home, surrounded by loved ones, as opposed to what's been happening for the last 737 days, where they would wake up in some kind of squalor, in a tunnel, filthy, covered in dust, covered in mud, dirty, unable to wash, and just incredibly uncomfortable, tortured, in some cases sexually assaulted, not seeing the light of day for months on end. Absolutely extraordinary stuff. But of course, who can forget as well, one of the big moments of yesterday was Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister of Great Britain. I take no pleasure in saying this, completely and utterly humiliated by Donald Trump. You can see him there. He puts his hand up as Donald Trump asks, where is the UK? This is all very carefully choreographed by President Trump, who knows exactly how to work the TV cameras, by the way. He calls Starmer over. Starmer looks as though he thinks he's going to get a chance to speak, and then Trump just turns around and turns his back on him, and he has to go back to his little spot and he has to pretend that he's not been humiliated. But everybody could see what happened. It was a moment of truth, because the reason it was done was because Keir Starmer deliberately went against Donald Trump's advice and decided to recognise the state of Palestine. And he didn't even do it in front of him. He did it after he left Britain while he was still in the air. That's the shocker. Brendan O'Neill's here. We'll talk to him in a moment. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. Darryl in Blackburn says, morning, Mike. If I put my arm up like Starmer when Trump asked, where is the UK? Starmer would have said it was a far-right Nazi salute, like they did with Elon Musk. Yeah, I'm not surprised. They probably would have tried that on. This from Chris in Ottershaw. Mike, I have very mixed feelings today. On the one hand, I'm overjoyed for the Jewish and Israeli people, for the return of the hostages, and for Donald Trump bringing peace to Israel and Gaza. But on the other hand, I feel shame for my country because our Prime Minister has brought humiliation upon us because of his craven attitude towards the conflict in Gaza and Israel. A lot of people feeling like that. Let's ask Brendan O'Neill what he makes of it all. Brendan, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike.
I think we all felt a mixture of feelings yesterday, didn't we? We've all been living with this in some way, shape or form for months, and in some cases 2 and a bit years. And it was great to see the relatives looking so happy in Hostage Square when they were witnessing the release of their loved ones, and fantastic to see Donald Trump's kind of exhibition of world statesmanship and showing really what it's like, to be the most powerful man in the world. But also there is a sort of a sense of loss, for one, because of the dead people who aren't coming back alive, many of whom were murdered by Hamas and many of whom may never come back in any form, but also because it was embarrassing to watch the leader of this country, Keir Starmer, being absolutely and utterly humiliated on the world stage.
Oh, just so embarrassing. I'm sorry, but he just makes a fool of himself time and time again. And Trump walked him into that trap, as you say. Trump knew exactly what he was doing. He was humiliating Britain. But you know what? It's not often I say this, but actually Britain deserved it. Or should I say Keir Starmer's government deserved it? Because the way they've behaved over this crisis is absolutely disgusting, actually. While Trump was trying his very best to make peace, to drag Hamas to the table, to force Hamas to finally surrender, we hope, at that exact same time, Starmer was rewarding Hamas. He was giving them a state. He was recognizing the state of Palestine. Hamas described that as one of the fruits of 7th of October. So Hamas was basically thanking Keir Starmer for giving them a gift for their murder of Jewish people. That's what Starmer was doing. That was such dangerous diplomacy, exactly at the same time that Trump was trying to make peace. So if Trump is incredibly ticked off with Starmer, I'm not surprised at all.
Yes, because not only did he do that, but he waited until the literal moment that Donald Trump's sort of plane had taken off from the UK. You know, it was sort of wheels up, and suddenly Starmer's out there going, oh, by the way, we're going to recognise Palestine as a state. He didn't even really have the sense and the courage to say it to Donald Trump's face.
Yeah, so it was stupidity and cowardice all mixed together. He didn't have the cojones to say to Trump's face, look, we're recognizing Palestine. He waited until the big guy had left, and then he kind of said it. Disgraceful behavior, very destructive. Israel and America have both essentially said that Britain screwed up on this and that Britain played its hand very badly. And we did. Keir Starmer did. It's true. But, you know, the other thing that I keep thinking about today, Mike, is the amazing thing that Trump has done, which has brought home 20 Jewish men, taking them away from the fascist tyranny of Hamas and brought them back to the Jewish homeland. It's such an extraordinary thing. But we must never forget that when these men's posters went up in London, New York and Paris, all across the West, they were torn down by leftists and Islamists. They were graffitied. People smeared excrement on a poster in New York. Can never forget that the so-called anti-fascists destroyed these men's posters. They ripped them down. They made fun of them. They called the hostages colonizers. So even though there is great joy because these men have returned home, we cannot forget that the left utterly abandoned these men and treated them like dirt. It was really depraved.
Yeah, and it's still going on because, you know, despite what Shabana Mahmood said only last week, the Home Secretary has not clamped down on Palestinian protests. I know that we've all got a slight kind of, you know, sense of squeamishness perhaps about the government banning marches, but, you know, there's no doubt because we saw at the weekend our own Samara Gill went down to the march on Saturday, found a guy carrying an ISIS flag, and when she asked him what he was doing, he claimed it wasn't an ISIS flag, but then said, you know, we want to get rid of Israel and we won't stop protesting until we do. So, you know, it's no longer about peace, it's no longer about a ceasefire, it's now about the destruction of Israel.
Yeah, and you know what? I think it was always about that. I think the reason that these people are still marching, even though they've got the ceasefire that they were clamoring for the past 2 years, is because their marches were never about peace. In fact, these were pro-war marches. They wanted war against the world's only Jewish state. They wanted that state to be destroyed. We know they do. That's what they want because they chant from the river to the sea, which means removing Israel, removing the Jews and replacing it with a new state. And we know that some of them openly called for the destruction of Zionism, the destruction of the Zionist entity, which is their racist term for Israel. That's what they've been calling for 2 years, and that's what they're going to continue agitating for. So the veil of pacifism has been torn off this movement. They can no longer hide behind the language of ceasefire. The true nature of what they want has now been exposed for the world to see. And what they want, I think, is the anti-Semitic destruction of the Jewish homeland. That's what this movement is. It's a racist movement to destroy Israel.
Totally. No question at all. Let's have a look at what Shabana Mahmood said about these pro-Palestinian protests. I think she had at least almost a finger of truth in what she said.
I do have to say I disagree with him. I was very clear that the protests that took place immediately after this terror attack, especially in Manchester itself, were fundamentally un-British. I hope he would agree that sometimes imagining it was you that had suffered and extending a hand of friendship, love and solidarity to a community that is suffering is the kind thing to do, it's the right thing to do, it's the British thing to do. And I would have wanted to see organisers of those protests in Manchester in the immediate aftermath of the attack and across the country at least show some of that very British solidarity. That doesn't mean to say that people are not allowed to protest. They are, they have been, I'm sure they will continue to do so. But sometimes I think a little bit of solidarity and kindness can go an awful long way.
I mean, that's not quite the same as telling them that they're going to have police are going to have special powers to clamp down on them. You know, asking them for solidarity and kindness, it's not really going to work, is it?
Well, asking for kindness from this movement is a complete waste of time because it's not a kind movement, however it might present itself. But, you know, she's right to say that the fact that these people marched immediately after the Manchester synagogue terrorist attack is horrific. It's truly horrific because what those marchers were calling for in the aftermath of that anti-Semitic attack, they were saying, long live the Intifada.
Yeah.
We all know what Intifada is. Intifada is violence against Jews in Israel. So, and they were openly calling for the destruction of the Jewish state. So we had a situation in this country in the 21st century where a terrorist killed 2 Jews, and then instantly there were people on the streets essentially saying that they wanted more Jews to die.
Yeah.
Because they wanted more Intifada. They wanted Israel to be scrubbed from the face of the earth. And we all know what that would entail. That would entail the mass expulsion and probably the death of lots of Jewish people in Israel. So this is the serious situation we find ourselves in. We have radical Islamists in this country who have an open loathing for Jews, and we have a left, or an Islamo left, as some of us refer to it, who also have a contempt for Jews. This is a serious crisis, and no politician in the Labour government seems capable of getting a handle on it.
No. Because you saw over the weekend, you know, Bridget Phillipson claiming that we'd played some massive part in bringing this peace deal together, which wasn't true. They don't like mentioning Donald Trump's actual name. We've got Sadiq Khan, who has yet to tweet, by the way, about anything to do with the hostages being released, anything to do with the peace deal, and yet he's very happy to say and admit in his own chamber, when he was asked by Susan Hall, we just saw this, that he doesn't think the chant from the river to the sea is anti-Semitic.
Sadiq Khan is a disgrace.
Yeah.
I mean, what a disgrace that a historic city like London, once a great city, has got such an idiot for a mayor, and actually quite a sinister mayor, I think, because the Jewish community in London, there are a significant number of Jews who live very peaceably in London, and they have done for a long time. A lot of them have said to him that they think From the River to the Sea is a cry for the destruction of their homeland. And that's what it is. They interpret it as a threatening cry, as an anti-Semitic cry. And when they see mobs on the streets waving the keffiyeh and the Palestine flag and making that chant, they've said they don't feel safe to go into London. And they've got good reason not to feel safe, because Jews wearing kippahs or Star of David necklaces have been harassed. They have been pushed around by some of these protesters. So Sadiq Khan is just ignoring the pleas of London's Jews, and he is just brushing them aside. I think that is unforgivable. He should take more seriously the concerns of Jewish people in London.
Yeah, and also police who have been involved in arresting others for hate crime, and people who are involved in framing this Islamophobia law. You know, as far as they're concerned, all you need to commit a hate crime is for somebody to feel vulnerable, or for somebody to feel distressed, or for somebody to feel as though you know, you're picking on them. So how does that not work if Israeli Jewish people or British Jews say we don't feel safe? Apparently it doesn't apply to them.
Exactly right. The double standards are extraordinary. And there's a clip going around, I'm sure you've seen it, of a protest in Oxford, I think, where the protesters chant, Gaza, Gaza, do us proud, put the Zios in the ground.
Yeah.
That is an open call for the killing of what they would say are Zionists, but I would say are primarily Jewish people.
Yeah.
That will not be treated, I bet you, with the same seriousness as someone like Lucy Connolly, who was banged up for months for her stupid tweet that she wrote after the Southport riots. There's this two-tier justice. We all know it's true. We can all see it with our own eyes. The establishment denies it constantly, even though we all know it's there. And we really see that two-tier approach in relation to the Jewish people in this country and to the question of Israel. The usual rules of wokeness never apply when it comes to those issues, and I find that really interesting.
Yeah, I find it quite sort of chilling, actually. And I mean, the way that this country is going and the way that some of these Labour politicians are stewarding it is only going to lead to a bad place. Have a look at this. This is Samara Gill, Talk's very own presenter, going down to the march on Saturday and spotting an ISIS flag.
A flag for the Islamic State right near Westminster. I mean, we've had a terrorist attack in the past few weeks, and now we have someone wielding an Islamic State flag. Modern Britain confirmed that that flag there is a flag for jihad. It's a very interesting flag. What does it mean?
Declaration of faith. Basically, it means there's no God but Allah, and his prophet is Muhammad. That's it.
It looks a lot like the jihad flag to me.
Nah. We're here to show the government they need to cut ties with Israel. We want no more. We want Palestine to be free.
Free from what?
Free from Israel.
The troops have come out just a couple days ago, so it is effectively free now, would you?
Yeah, it is, but obviously the original whole land, even where Israel is now, that was all Palestine's land anyways. So you want the land back. I'm not too educated on the history, I'll be honest, but obviously speak to someone older that knows the history. I'm not too educated on it.
So you're happy for the Jews to be removed from Israel?
I'm very happy for that to happen.
Okay, and how would you want that to happen?
God knows, innit?
God knows, innit? Welcome to Britain 2025, Brendan. It's a bit worrying, that, isn't it?
Incredibly worrying. I mean, that guy can be forgiven to a certain extent. He's very young. He's obviously a bit dumb, if I'm allowed to say that. Yeah. He's saying stupid things and he's waving a really wicked flag. But you know who I have even more contempt for are the kind of bourgeois middle-class leftists who march alongside people like that. These are the kinds of people who claim to be anti-fascist, who claim to be super woke, who tweet "be kind" and have the pride flag and the BLM fist and all that stuff in their social media bios. It's those kinds of middle-class people been traipsing against Israel for the past 2 years, and on almost every march that they've been on, there have been radical Islamists. There have been people either waving the ISIS flag, as we saw there, or chanting for the return of the army of Muhammad to kill Jews, or chanting openly for holy war against the Jewish state, by which they mean more pogroms, more Hamas-style pogroms. So for the leftists to march shoulder to shoulder with those religious reactionaries, some of whom are driven by open contempt for the Jewish people, that is utterly unforgivable. And I think we've seen such an unholy marriage on our streets between pious leftists and radical extremists. And we really need a reckoning with how that happened over the past 2 years.
I think we really do. And there's only one real conclusion you can draw, and that is to put an end to these marches in some way, shape or form, however you can do it. Brendan, great to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Brendan O'Neill, chief political writer at Spiked. Let's get a voice note from Dan.
Good morning, Mike. It's Dan from Kent. Genius from Trump yesterday. I honestly believe that prior to his press conference, someone had a quiet word with Starmer and said, yeah, we want you up on stage. We want you to deliver a little speech, say a few words. So kept him hanging as he read out all the countries, praising everyone. When he got to the United Kingdom, Starmer steps forward, yeah, it's my moment in the spotlight, and bang, door slammed shut in his face. Brilliant. Great show.
It really was. It was like leading him onto the punch, wasn't it? And only Starmer couldn't see it because he's so thick. He really is. He's got the graces of the social graces of an ox. He literally doesn't see anything coming. He can't see subtlety. He doesn't understand it. And because he's quite arrogant, as is what people say about him, he obviously thinks he belongs in all these places. But he clearly doesn't. You know, when you're in there with the big dog, mate, you don't matter. And that's, unfortunately, exactly where he is. He's not so much a big dog as a chihuahua. It's 8:21.
We don't want that. We don't want that.
I'm desperate for anything that will help tackle our illegal immigration crisis.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 8:25, very nearly. Stephen in London says, once upon a time he would have been mortified that our Prime Minister was snubbed, but everyone is laughing at Starmer, and we know he deserves it. Starmer is an embarrassment for us and is an embarrassment to the world. In one group shot, he was relegated to the back row behind Erdogan from Turkey, or Turkey. How does he say it? Turkey, or something. Yeah, Turkey. Something like that. Mike says, Johanna from Salisbury, I'll give Hillary Clinton her due. She recognised Trump's achievement in Gaza and congratulated him. Hillary Clinton, an adversary of Trump, congratulated him on his achievement, but Sadiq Khan couldn't. He's a little nobody man and will remain one. I think that's the problem, isn't it? But all of these people are being exposed now for the idiocy and, quite frankly, poisonous ideology that they believe in. Because if you hadn't really thought about it, if your name is Sadiq Khan, you're the Mayor of London, surely to God you should be welcoming a peace deal in Gaza. He talks often about how many people from Palestine live in London, how many people have been affected by the war. He talks often about, you know, the dangers of anti-Semitism, but what he hasn't said is that he welcomes the peace deal, that he welcomes the hostages being released, and he welcomes an end to hostilities. He hasn't said any of that, which seems extraordinary, doesn't it? Let's talk now to Noah Hoffman, political correspondent at The Sun. Nick Parker, foreign editor, is in Hostage Square, was there yesterday and was writing on page 10 today of The Sun, in which he says, Trump bullied and bulldozed all sides, but the impossible dream of peace is now possible. Hate was turned into hope. And it was a very, very extraordinary day yesterday. And for those of you who didn't see what our coverage was, who weren't able to watch it yesterday, I would recommend you go back and watch just the day on Talk, because it was extraordinary. From the moment we started at 6 o'clock in the morning, the first hostages were released before 6:30 a.m. our time. And even we were kind of taken aback by the speed with which it all seemed to then happen. And by 10 o'clock, all 20 hostages were out on their way home, either with their families already or in hospitals or being examined in cars. Absolutely incredible stuff. Noah, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
It's a great piece by Nick. I know Nick Parker many years, probably more years than you've been alive, very possibly, and he and I worked together a long time ago. He's written a great piece about how 2 years ago, since he was in Hostages Square yesterday, you found myself literally standing outside the smashed kibbutz, watching horrible things that had gone on, watching terrible, rhetoric coming from both Gaza and from the Israeli side. Hamas leaders, sending guns, rockets filling the air, Israeli warplanes blitzing the skyline. I mean, it was a terrible war zone for so long, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was 2 years of real absolute hell and agony. And I think yesterday, the 2-year build-up just made it all the more emotional. I think there were a lot of tears, not just flooding Hostages Square, but also across the world, really. And in London too, where a lot of people who have a very strong connection to these hostages, and of course to civilians in Gaza as well, just felt this huge weight of relief that they'd been clinging on to for so long. So it was a very emotive day. Yeah,
I think so. And of course, we still wait to see whether the bodies of some of the other hostages who didn't make it out alive are going to be returned. So far, some anger yesterday that Hamas only returned 4 bodies of the dead hostages, another 24 still to come.
Yeah, that's right. And the Hostages Families Forum actually put out a very strong statement saying that Hamas has really renegaded on their side of the agreement, and that the agreement should effectively be paused because the promised bodies of loved ones who have been murdered have not yet been returned. So that is a potential roadblock in this whole peace deal. And I think really there'll be a lot of pressure on Hamas now, particularly from Qatar, to get those bodies back to Israel as soon as possible.
Yes, and now that Trump has obviously left and gone back to the US, and the focus is no longer quite as laser-like as it was yesterday, people will be watching the 20-point plan and its kind of introduction, if you like. Much of it, though, depends very much on whether there is this board of peace set up, whether or not Hamas will agree to lay down their arms. What hopes do you think you have for that?
Yeah, so this is the extra tricky part. And Donald Trump, just what a phenomenal achievement, even getting us to this point of having the hostages all released, having, the IDF withdraw to the agreed green lines, and stop in all firing of weapons, of bombs from both sides. That was a great achievement, but that was, and I don't want this to sound too crude, but that was the easier part. And now comes the very difficult part. There are a lot of details within this 20-point plan that are yet to be worked out. And a main one of those is the post-war plan for Gaza, who governs it, who rebuilds its institutions, who de-radicalizes its population. This is a very important point, because after 2 years of war, the extremism within the population will be even worse than it was already. And there is no hope for peace with a radicalized population. So who governs it? And then this crucial point of how do weapons get removed from Hamas? How do they get decommissioned? Who takes them away? Where do they go? And what happens to these remaining thousands of Hamas fighters? Because there is no way Israel will uphold its side of the deal if Hamas still is holding on to these weapons, still has access. So that is where the tricky bit comes in. And Donald Trump is a very busy man. So how he is going to concentrate on all the domestic issues affecting the US, let alone these really complex diplomatic negotiations that he's meant to be chairing on the so-called peace board, that is going to be very tricky. And that is where this all has the potential to fall apart.
Yeah, exactly right. And we'll keep our eyes on it. And I mean, he's now moved on a bit, hasn't he? He's now talking about having meetings with Volodymyr Zelensky on Friday to see if he can solve the Ukraine problem as well.
Yeah, and let's not forget about that absolutely devastating war too. And I think he will feel this sort of sense of momentum, having got this far in the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. You could not really get two more difficult actors to get them around the table than Netanyahu and whoever the hell is in charge of Hamas these days. They drop like flies the minute one pops up. The IDF gets rid of them happily so. But Putin really is proving to be one of the most difficult sort of dictators to get around the table and actually make good on what he promises. There's a lot of talk and not a lot of follow-up. So I think, on paper, Israel would be the hardest conflict to solve, the Israel-Palestine problem. But actually what we're seeing is that the Ukraine-Russia war is proving even more difficult in this day and age.
Yeah, absolutely right. Great to talk to you, Noah Hoffman. Thank you very much indeed, from The Sun, political correspondent there, on Nick Parker's piece written from Hostages Square yesterday in the midst of the celebrations. But as he says, some unthinkable things could happen. Trump's plan to create a board of peace led by Sir Tony Blair to run Gaza before peace-loving Palestinians take over is already on shaky ground. Let's have a look and see what Sun readers are saying about the Gaza situation.
Letters from The Sun, the page where you tell Britain what to think. For more, visit thesun.co.uk.
And it's all about Keir Starmer. Stuart Lovett says this from Leicester. Why did Starmer fly off to Egypt for the Gaza summit? He had nothing to do with the ceasefire. While the UK falls apart, he seems more interested in posing on the world stage. One from Susan in Newport, who says Starmer arrived in Egypt on Monday just to be seen yet again on the international stage. Donald Trump put in all the work to get Israel and Palestine to this point, and I'm sure he doesn't need Starmer to hold his hand to seal the deal. Our Prime Minister needs to get on with fixing broken Britain, but he knows that's a battle he is losing. Well, he seems to be losing battles on every front at the moment. He's losing the battle with China. He's losing the battle to be relevant in the Middle East. He's losing the battle with the economy. He's losing the battle with immigration. He's losing the battle with his own party, for heaven's sake. And he's now losing the battle with his international reputation, shredded by his own ridiculous views and his own ridiculous actions. 0344 499 1000 is the number. Coming up, we'll speak to Zia Yusuf.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 8:36. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until, of course, 10 o'clock. Lee from Bexley Heath says the cringiest thing about yesterday was when Trump had finished his speech and all the rest of the world leaders had gone. Starmer started hanging around like a bad smell, wanting to join Trump in some supposed meeting that they've been having together. Trump completely ignored him. Yeah, that's when you see Trump shaking hands with a few people who are leaving and Starmer's just standing around behind him, sort of waiting to talk to him, which of course never happens. It's really embarrassing. Let's get a voice note from Danny.
Hello, Mike. Danny, the window cleaner from Devon here. I can't believe you can't say born and bred somewhere at the moment. It's just censorship gone mad. A friend of mine entered a radio competition in 2004 for a song for the England's Euro campaign, and it was called Born in England. He won the competition. It got released, the record. They made them change, back then in 2004, they made them change the lyrics to "This game was born in England" on the first line of the chorus, but the second line of the chorus still sang "We were born in England, the bravest of the brave." Would they be allowed to do that this day and age, or would that just offend just about everybody in the country?
Yeah, I mean, well, they should be allowed to do it. I mean, the idea that you can't in some way say born and bred in a place is ridiculous. Let's talk to Zia Yusuf, head of Doge at Reform UK, of course. Zia, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
We were talking earlier to the Free Speech Union about this mad story from Falkirk up in Scotland, where Reform councillor Claire Mackey-Brown says that she was born and bred here, and then suddenly sort of catches herself and tries to correct it. Have a look.
People don't want answers about the local white boy who's done this that you are unaware of.
Because it's not known. If I don't know about it, how am I supposed to have an opinion on it or be able to ask questions? I don't have an answer to that. I'm trying my hardest to bring community cohesion. I've been overwhelmed with the contacts I've had from people within Falkirk. And, you know, there is a true unrest, and it's scary. It's scary as a local resident, somebody who's born and bred here. I shouldn't have said that.
Well, do you see why this is? People sometimes think that Reform are very much against having people here.
It just came out, just...
That's unfortunate for you, I guess, but ultimately, do you see why people who aren't from here, who have maybe made their home here, are annoyed when they hear an elected official say that people are born and bred here?
That's unfortunate for you, says the journalist, who apparently wasn't born and bred there either, it would seem, from Northern Ireland. But, you know, this is a ludicrous situation, isn't it? She shouldn't be apologising for saying that she was born and bred in a place where she'd like to be a councillor.
No, look, I feel really sorry for her. You know, I saw that clip when it first sort of started circling on social media, and my first reaction was, of course, she hasn't said anything remotely, nothing that could be even remotely considered controversial or wrong by any right-thinking, reasonable person. But what's really terrifying about all of this, Mike, is this is all part of an endless intimidation campaign just against ordinary people. Just speaking normally now, you're going to get intimidated. Look at the way the journalist reacted there. You know, again, any normal, you know, I put it to you, even if you had the most far-left person on your show and they were just saying something that was actually reasonable and nothing to worry about, and they sort of self-censored like that, you would have probably set them right. To be fair to you, just set them right. And instead, what this journalist did was double down on that moment. And the reason my heart goes out to her is because she's clearly a very good person and a very nice and decent person, but she's been caught up in this web of intimidation that we are seeing. And it's not just elected officials, Reform officials, it's candidates. It's also just, again, the people I'm most concerned about right now are just ordinary voters. I get so many emails and DMs, so does Nigel and the MPs, from people who are teachers or they work in the civil service. And in other parts of the country, and they say, we love Reform, thank you for everything you're doing, we're going to vote for Reform, please don't use my name because I will lose my job if they find out that I even support Reform. And so I think people really underestimate where this country is. We have been saying for some time now, this country is slipping rapidly into becoming some kind of Orwellian surveillance state as a result of things like the Online Safety Act, the attempt to bring in this Islamophobia definition, the endless knocking of doors by the police for speech, so-called speech violations and non-crime hate incidents. It's all compounding to create this incredibly chilling effect. What does born and bred mean? Born and bred, these are not characterizations in a subjective manner. These are just objective facts. She might as well have said, I've got a back garden.
Yeah.
You know, it's not, there's nothing about that that's remotely offensive to any reasonable person. And I'd actually also go further. Most people in this country, even if they are someone who would vote for a left-wing party, they're not actually offended by that. It's a very specific group of activists. Frankly, many journalists in this country now fit into that category, and they've taken it upon themselves to seek to intimidate people who are sensible, right-thinking, and love their country. Go to any country in the world, Pakistan, Japan, China. I bet you if that journalist went to any other country on the planet and heard a local person say, I was born and bred here, she'd probably be delighted and give them a hug.
Well, it's a bit like yesterday watching the celebrations in Hostage Square in Tel Aviv and seeing all the Israeli flags flying. It's remarkable to see a country where they're very proud to wave their own flag, and because it represents something for them. And presumably, if we have had a similar outpouring of support for our hostages coming home, we'd be told, you might make people feel a bit uncomfortable if you wave all those flags around. You don't want to be doing that.
But Mike, we literally had that yesterday. So what an incredible day, obviously. For the people in the Middle East, for Israel, for the Palestinians, and what an amazing amount of credit is due to President Trump and everyone who worked tirelessly on making that happen. Certainly not Keir Starmer, by the way. But you make that point that let's contrast that to the way British people are treated when they wave their flag. Did you see that clip that went mega viral all around the world, actually, of that Labour MP, Jivan? I forget his surname. The only reason anyone knows who he is because of the insane things he's become notorious all over the world for going around. He did a video where he implored British people to stop hoisting the Union flag because it was, quote, making immigrants uneasy. That's a direct quote. And so, again, number one, I don't know who these immigrants are who are feeling uneasy and uncomfortable about the British flag. I would say this too. If you're a migrant who has come to the United Kingdom and you are made to feel uneasy by the Union flag, I have no problem nor hesitation in saying you should probably find somewhere else to go, because this is the United Kingdom, and it is time that British people get all British people want is the exact same right as anyone else. And by the way, here's the funny thing. The same people, I think it was Constantine Kisson who made this point, but it was a funny point that he made, so I'll repeat it. It was that all of the people who have flags in their Twitter bios, right, the Pride flag or the Palestine, the Gaza flag, these are the very people who are now getting extremely upset by the Union flag or the St. George's flag, and similarly, how often are flags of other cultures, of political activisms other than this country being foisted into our faces? You go around London at any time, you go around, local council buildings, you go into corporations. How many corporations? If you try and go and buy a spanner from B&Q or go into the supermarket, you're confronted with huge flags of all sorts of political movements. But when it comes to the British flag, the Union flag or the St. George's flag, suddenly everybody needs to get back into their box. Well, people have had enough for it, and this is why Reform is leading in the polls. It was why one of the first things we did when we took control of those 10 councils in England was to pass council motions forbidding any flags other than the proper national flags and those of our military, our royal family and the local counties to be flown on council premises.
Well, wasn't it funny when that whole business with Gary Neville popped up last week, and he very proudly announced that he'd had a Union flag removed from one of his buildings, but he'd left the Moldovan flag up. This doesn't make any sense. You're kind of going, well, what sort of world are you living in where you object to your own flag, but the flag of a foreign country is fine to go up because there's a couple of workers there from Moldova? It's insane. But funny enough, Connie Shaw was here earlier from the Free Speech Union, and she made a good point that what was the sort of trans activist movement has now turned into this kind of pro-migration movement where you couldn't refer to trans people in a bad way and a wrong way. You couldn't call a trans woman a man because that was terrible. But they've sort of moved on from that, and now you can't refer to people who are not from here, as in some way, needing to actually acclimatise themselves to British ways of life.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing is insane. I mean, on the Gary Neville thing, maybe it's just me, but I actually find the visual of Gary Neville wandering around a building site, furiously pulling down flags on his own, actually quite sad and somewhat demonic. I actually, in some ways, feel sorry for him. It's a very strange thing to do. It's also really fascinating, isn't it, that whenever anyone is waving the flag of anything other than the United Kingdom, England, or Scotland or Wales, the people we hear from, these talking heads, they always assume benevolent intentions, right? You never hear any kind of malevolent intention from those people. If somebody wants to hoist a Union flag or a St George's flag, the intent, as Gary Neville claimed and as this GVAN MP claimed from Labour, clearly the intent of raising that flag or being proud of that flag is in some way to do harm to somebody else, something they could not possibly know. The notion that Gary Neville could possibly know what was in someone's mind when they put that flag up is for the birds. And again, I think we all know, Mike, what's in people's minds and what's in their hearts when they're raising that flag. It is an act of defiance. That is true. It is an act of defiance because people are sick and tired of being told they are not allowed. In some cases, it is illegal in this country for British people to show pride or English people to show pride in their own country. And that is a disgrace. And we fully support their actions at Reform.
Coming up in a major speech next month, I'm reading this morning, Nigel Farage is expected to drop Reform's 2024 manifesto promises to cut fuel duty as well as income tax, corporation tax and inheritance tax. He says they're not going to, at Reform, start attempting to cut taxes until they've made savings. I mean, you're obviously part of the DOGE, well, you head the DOGE unit at Reform UK. How confident are you that those savings can actually be made?
Yeah, well, look, firstly, you got a lot of talking heads in the political world and obviously the Labour Party and the Tory Party, the failed Tory Party now, claiming that this is some sort of huge shock. Well, I don't see how it's a shock that our manifesto for the last general election is not going to be the same as our manifesto for the next general election, in no small part because it was Labour that won that election, and we had one of the most, incompetent chancellors you could ever have hoped to see, probably the most incompetent one of my lifetime, and that's some low bar for her to have gotten over there. And therefore, the country's finances are already in a horrific state. Our 30-year bond yields are at the highest level in decades. I think short-term debt instruments are going to start moving negatively in this country, sadly, too, in the not-too-distant future, because Reeves's position is becoming increasingly untenable, and what comes after her will be a Burnham-esque sort of total clown show, or someone even worse than Reeves. And so we've got to be realistic. Reform is a serious party. We are preparing for government because there's a good chance that the British people will deliver that result. Obviously, we're going to continue to work hard and we take nothing for granted, but it would be irresponsible for us to not be starting to prepare. We're already doing that. Danny's already doing great work on that, as are other people in our party. And as part of that, what Nigel is saying is, look, we need to shore up and make sure the public finances are in order. Once that happens, we're clear about where we want to focus our tax cuts, and it will be on those hardworking people who earn the least. That is where it should start, because those are the people we think deserve it the most. Now, we are also clear, though, we want to welcome wealthy people into this country, and we want our brightest and our best, the entrepreneurs, the people fleeing this country at a record pace right now. We want those people to stay. We want them to come back. We want others like them to be here in this country so that they contribute lots in taxes, pay their fair share, and we can use that money to reduce taxes on people earning the least, but going to work. That is a really key part of the Reform promise. We are on the side of people who set their alarm clocks in the evening before going to bed, rise early and go and graft, whether that's on a building site or in the financial services city of London. That is whom we are on the side of.
And are you finding it as easy or as difficult as you thought it might be to try and make these savings locally in some of the councils that you're looking into?
Well, look, if you look at a place like Kent, which is obviously a huge budget, the number that there's been £63 million of savings already identified, much of which is already underway. And that comes through things like £20 million in the form of scrapping the climate emergency, which means that companies bidding on local council contracts no longer have to jump through these insane net zero hoops just to qualify. So more companies can take part, and therefore taxpayers get better value. It's come from millions of pounds in savings from not doing pointless office upgrades, given most of the workers don't even come to work. So we've already done that. And that number, that £63 million number, is the biggest amount of savings any English council, in fact any council in the UK, has ever identified in a single year outside of an enforced bankruptcy situation. And it's worth noting as well, because I'm not sure everyone's aware of this, because the vast majority of council budgets come from our social care, adult and children's social care, the reality is that when central government that set all the rules, so remember this, local government has virtually no ability at all to set the parameters of who gets that welfare and how it's delivered. When central government is determining how much money each local council gets, those calculations are literally done on the assumption that the local council raises taxes by 5%. That is literally on the IFS's website. So most of the conversation around this is totally dishonest. And I'll say this too. The 5% is one thing, because inflation right now is running at 3.5%, 4%. The 5% is one thing. Let's talk about the party of fiscal responsibility, as they're hilariously now trying to characterise themselves as. Let's talk about what the Tories did in the Council of Croydon last year, where they hiked it by 15%. Shall we talk about Thurrock, where they raised it by 10% and took a £600 million handout from the central government taxpayer as well? These are. This is how the Tories have run councils. Labour exactly the same. So around about 90 local councils in the UK have raised council tax by more than 5% over the last decade. None of those are reform. Around half are Tory and just under half are Labour. These parties spend money like drunken sailors, and it is reform and only reform that are going to get our public finances in order. We're the ones who've actually proven already we know how to run a budget. We've not bankrupted any councils like the two big parties have time and time again. Look at what's happening in Birmingham. The bin bags are piling up and they're still spending money on crazy DEI projects and smashing council tax up high single-digit percentages in most cases. So we're going to get the public finances under control, but we're also, Mike, going to welcome the dynamic wealth creators in this country. We're going to scrap the mad net zero targets, get our energy prices down, and then we're going to stimulate the British economy through giving back some of those tax cuts that we make giving back some of the savings that we make in public spending in the form of tax cuts, so the British people keep more of their money, and that's the path to growing our economy properly again.
So will it be another year or so before you can show maybe a council tax decrease for people, or just a freeze?
Well, the challenge with local government, I said, Mike, is that it is Westminster and central government that control all of the parameters around social care. And so let me give you an example, right? So special educational needs children. And clearly there are children who need help from the state because of their special educational need. That is not in doubt, and it is important those kids get their help, and reform will ensure that. But Mike, if the majority of kids in an area now categorised as special educational needs, then the state is handing money to all of those kids' parents, then all that's going to do is bankrupt that council and bankrupt the country so that no kid gets that help. That's the reality, right? So if you look at one of the councils I was in, for example, the population of special educational needs children is compounding at like 13 to 15% every single year. Every single one of those kids then gets a free taxi to and from work and a whole load of other provisions from the council. And what is clear is that there is overdiagnosis there. And again, what that means, no one is harmed more by that than the kids who actually need that help. So the only way we're really going to be able to sort the public finances out ultimately is to ensure that reform is the majority in the House of Commons. What we will commit to is ensuring none of the reform councils go bankrupt, and ensuring that, I mean, look, if Kent hadn't made all of those savings, Mike, and if our other councils hadn't made the kind of savings through Doge that they had done, I'm telling you, there was a real risk that what has happened, as I said, in around 50 Tory councils and 35, 40 Labour councils over the last decade would have happened in reform councils as well. So the problem at the moment for local councils is the vast majority of what they are delivering and their budget are social care. That is controlled by this Labour government and not by local councils. And so it is a great testament to them that they've managed to find the savings to plug the hole that this awful Labour government continue to leave in them.
OK. So, good to talk to you. Thanks very much. We're out of time. Zia Yusuf, the head of Doge Reform UK, fighting to try and save some money. Doesn't sound as easy as it looks, obviously. Harry Cole's coming up in a little while. We're going to look at some sports stories coming up as well. It's 5 to 9.
Not merely Israel and Hamas, but many other sides that had to be brought in, such as the support of Hamas and others like that, to get to this point where finally the one thing that we always knew would end the conflict in sort of a military sense, i.e. the return of the hostages, has happened. So, you're right to say we don't know quite how it's going to unfold from here, but for this particular part, he said from day one, the hostages are all coming back. All of them are coming back, and he's got them back. And it was he and his administration who've made the difference.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock. In fact, it's nearly 9 o'clock now. We've got to do a quick 90 minutes in a quick 90 seconds.
90 minutes in 90 seconds.
From the Sun.
World Cup qualified tonight, 7:45, Latvia versus England. We've got Martin Lipson, Chief Sports Reporter at The Sun. Martin, very good morning to you.
Good morning. Near 9 seconds, I think. Let's go.
We've got plenty of time, don't worry. Thomas Tuchel told Marcus Rashford he needs to be one of the best players in the world. He needs to score more goals, needs to be better tonight.
Well, it's clear that Rashford is enjoying life in Barcelona. He's playing very, very well for them and showing that United's errors were United's errors rather than his. Nevertheless, he's only scored the one goal for Tuchel. That was a penalty in Serbia the other month, and the demand from the manager is for him to show that he's got that quality, to turn potential into reality, to score more goals, to create more goals, to prove he can be one of the top left-sided attackers in the world. And that's not a bad demand of any player, is it, to show you're really good?
No, not at all. Want to give us a quick prediction for tonight, Latvia, England?
England will win 3-0 and be the first qualifiers from Europe for the World Cup.
Sounds good to me. Martin, thanks very much indeed. Martin Lipton, Chief Sports Reporter at The Sun there, looking ahead to Latvia, England tonight, 7:45 kick-off. Can Marcus Rashford score a couple of goals? We shall see. Harry Cole coming next from The Sun after the news.
Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hey!
8722, start your message with the word talk. Who would you send to space and why?
The person I would love to send to space would be...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's come up to 4 minutes past 9. I'm Mike Graham. We're with you for the final hour of the show, of course, joined by a very special guest. Harry Cole is here, visiting from the United States of America. Very nice to see you.
Good morning.
Very good to see you.
I see you in person.
Yeah, in person. It's always better in person. But he's on his way back to America even as we speak.
On
right?
my way to the airport.
On his way to the airport.
To catch.
So he's got a plane to catch, but he's good enough to pop in to see us. Just before we get to talk about his big interview with Mark Thatcher, which is in the paper today and available on YouTube, of course, let's have a quick listen to this voice note from Darren on Starmer's humiliation.
Morning, Mike. Darren from Suffolk. Great show as ever. It's like Billy Smart's circus, isn't it, here in the UK at the moment? But don't mess with the Don, because he'll get one back on you. Don't say to the world that you think Trump's going to be a danger and you won't have dinner with him and all your cabinet calling names. He won't forget. He'll be there. He'll sort you out. Anyway, Mike, what's happening with all these weekly scandals from Labour? Morgan McSweeney, what happened with that? Anyway, Mike, all these scandals every week. No wonder the people at the darts is chanting what they are. Have a lovely day.
Yeah, well, he's making reference there to Sky, who can't apparently carry the audience reaction to the darts at the moment, because every time they go to the audience, they just start chanting that Keir Starmer is a something beginning with W and ending in R. We can't say the word this early in the morning, but he's not popular, is he? And it's all going wrong. Harry's going to give us a lowdown on that. Plus, as I say, big interview with Mark Thatcher. First interview since 2009, believe it or not. This, of course, is Morning Glory. It's all going terribly wrong for Keir Starmer, humiliated in the Middle East. He comes back to another China crisis. Nobody knows where it's all going to go. We're going to find out from the Sun's top man. 0344 499 1000 is the number. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. And so, Tuesday the 14th of October, the day after, a momentous day yesterday, Harry, wasn't it? Watching those incredible scenes in Hostel Square. Yeah. Incredible sort of the art of the deal by Donald Trump. I mean, really sort of just absolutely 100% going for all of it, standing there like the king of the world.
Yeah, having every sort of world leader except Netanyahu at that Egyptian summit. Basically, queuing up to lavish praise on it, trying to bask in his glory as well. And this deal would not have happened without Donald Trump. No. So everyone else saying, "Oh, we played a role in this, so we had a backseat for it." No, you didn't. No, you didn't. There's one guy that got this done through his completely unique diplomatic skills, which involve business, and everyone's going to school. Oh, what about you're using business? Yeah, people come to the table when there's money involved. That's why the Gulf states they want peace in the Middle East, so they make more money. He brought Netanyahu to heel. This guy's a hardliner. He's got hardliners, even hardliners around him. Getting him to accept the terms of a pretty unpalatable deal, actually. If you look at it, the number of hostages released, live hostages released, 20, which is over 2,000 Palestinians. A lot of them, a lot of Palestinian prisoners released in the past went on to be key figures in Hamas. So it was a pretty, it was not a great deal, but at least it's done. And obviously Hamas. Now, obviously, what we're going to see now is we've done the top of the deal. Now we need to do the bottom of the deal, which is routing Hamas out of Gaza. Goodbye, get out. You're not coming back. Decommission your arms, get rid of your rockets, put down your guns. That's when it's going to get tricky. Yeah, that is when it's going to get tricky. We'll come back to Starmer in a minute because I want to talk about Mark Thatcher. A big piece in the paper today, all about his mother. Because a lot of people have been talking about Margaret Thatcher, haven't they? The 100th anniversary of her birth. I mean, the Tory party seemed to be haunted by her in some way, shape or form. They had pictures of her up at the conference. They had dresses of hers that she used to wear on display. It's almost like they're sort of clutching at something. Yeah, they don't quite know what it is. Back to mummy with the comfort blanket, isn't it? Sort of is. That's how it feels. A bit weird. Yeah. Well, listen, its timing was fortuitous because it was obviously it was the 100th anniversary of her. Of her birth. There was a big old bash last night at the Guildhall in London, which had the sort of great and good of the right-wing establishment, all of her old living, anyone still alive that was in her cabinet, lots of Tory bigwigs and the like. Boris Johnson was there. Joan Collins was there, bizarrely. I don't think she was in the cabinet, was she? I don't think she was in the cabinet. It would have been a bit different if she had been. She had a little light glamour to it. I actually, I stopped her to ask her. I was doing a couple of interviews outside, and I made the fatal mistake of saying, Ms. Collins, can I have a quick word? Yeah. And she turned to me and death stared me and said, "It's Dame Joan." Brilliant. Fantastic. Yeah, put me in my place. Yeah. So Mark Thatcher hasn't spoken since 2009. He gave some brief remarks when his mother died. Obviously, he has had some controversies over the years. But no, it was fascinating to hear him talk about what he thought his mother would think of the world right now. And, let's have a look at one of the clips. This is what he said about Nigel Farage.
What would your mother have made of Nigel Farage and his particular style of politics?
My mother would have respected him for his beliefs, without a shadow of a doubt. He is a politician. Whatever you say about him, he's a belief politician. And that is a good thing. I mean, as long as we're allowed to have a debate in our society about the beliefs that we hold, it can only be a good thing. He believes strongly about it. My mother would have agreed with his views about the size of illegal immigration today, and she would have wanted to tackle those issues.
And since Trump's very much in the news, he also gave his views on what she would have thought about the Donald. Have a look at this.
She would think it's extremely important that they have their own beliefs, and that's very, very important. And clearly, President Trump believes strongly in the market economy. He has very clear ideas of what he wants to do and how he wants to do them. So in that regard, the fact he has got the common beliefs, and she would very much have subscribed to the bulk of them, I would think that she would be admiring his leadership.
It's funny, in a way, you wonder whether she might have been the one person who would have been able to kind of control
Yes.
Trump. You know, she really sort of handbagged him.
I think, yeah, I was talking to Professor Andrew Roberts last night. There's some more clips coming out later on, so I spoke to a lot of people last night about what what Mark Thatcher said and what and Professor Andrew Roberts, great mind. He said, Margaret Thatcher would have, exactly what you said. She would have met his match.
Yeah.
He would have met her match.
Yeah.
No, he would have met his match with her. There we go. Obviously, she had that incredibly good relationship with Ronald Reagan. Arguably one of the most successful US presidents. Brought the Cold War to an end. I think, I suspect they're kind of onto something. And I thought it was really interesting. He said there, about Nigel Farage, is that this is kind of what every sort of Tory politician, says privately, isn't it? That like the guy believes in something. He's authentic.
Yeah.
He's got that, and even if you don't agree with it, or if you do agree with it, but don't necessarily agree with if you agree with the symptoms or agree with the problems, but don't necessarily agree with the solutions, where he's coming from with Farage, and I think that's really bad for. That's really bad for the Tories. He was kind of lukewarm on Kemi Badenoch. He said, look. He said, look, she's doing her best.
Well, that's the problem.
Doing her best in a bad situation. But what he did say is that he sees remarkable similarities between when his mother took over the Tory party in 1975, country in the doldrums, Tories had just had a massive tonking. She did have a rocky first couple of years to her premiership as well, pre-Falklands. And he said, actually, ignore the polls. You just got to do what's right. Keep going, and he can see the similarities to Kemi's position, but what she fatally, what Margaret Thatcher didn't have, because she was so forthright, she didn't have a right-wing challenger party like Kemi has with Reform. So
well, that's
fascinating.
And she also had the ability, I think, to unite her party more easily, because, Kemi Badenoch came out last week at the conference and said, I think we're going to do away with the ECHR finally. Yeah. And then half of the sort of shadow cabinet jumps up and went, I don't know if that's such a good idea. They don't seem to be on the same hymn sheet. Yeah, the other thing we really chewed it over is that sort of party unity is very, much sort of weaker these days, but also, how would Margaret Thatcher have dealt with the social media age? How would she have dealt with that 24-hour news flow? Would sort of the ideas of Thatcherism, which are those sort of big, bold strokes of strong defence, faith, family, sound money, would that have cut through in the same way? And there's an argument you can have both ways. Politicians, will we ever see her like again? Perhaps not, because politics is just so different now. Yeah. There's a lot more people involved now as well. You've got 7,000 PRs working for the government currently. I was watching John Redwood talking the other day about how, when he was working closely with her, there was about 3 guys in sort of her inner circle. That was it. Yeah, no, exactly. And he said, we were talking about his memories of his mother, and he said she used to wake up in the morning and listen to, Farmers Today. Yeah. And that's how she'd find out about what's going on at DEFRA. And so it's a completely different world. Yeah, absolutely. But no, it's very interesting. He's mellowed in his later years, I think, Sir Mark Thatcher, and it's just very interesting to see, there's an argument raging about whether Margaret Thatcher would have voted for Brexit. Remember, during the referendum, a couple of her old staff said, "Oh no, she definitely was a Remainer." He scotched all that. Right. So he put task to a few. Brexit's an interesting subject, isn't it? Because it looks as though the government are trying to blame Brexit on all sorts of things.
Well,
we've got
trying to blame Nigel Farage for the state of the economy. People aren't just going to wash it. They think people are mugs. I know. They're taking people for mugs. And also, the logic of that is they said, "Oh, Nigel Farage, he got Brexit, and then he just walked away." So what you're saying is you'd rather have Nigel Farage as the Prime Minister than Theresa May. That's the Labour Party's position. You think, and fine, bring him into government if that's what you think. Exactly. He's more than happy to serve. Yeah. He's more than happy to clear up their mess. There's no logic. It's desperate. It's desperate, Mike.
Wes Streeting's quoted in the papers this morning as saying that Brexit is part of the problem, why the economy is so stagnant. Here's what Mark Thatcher told you about the UK economy.
I think that people are being encouraged to come across half of southern Europe and France and Germany, all those sort of places, to get to the United Kingdom, because when they get here, the prize on the beach is bigger. And my mother used to believe very strongly that before one should one should make a contribution to our society, make a contribution to the nation in which they live, before they should be permitted or allowed to draw upon the benefits of being a member of that society. And I think everybody's got it upside down. We simply have to stop spending in the way we are on social programmes. Otherwise, eventually they will stop. They will have to stop because the arithmetic will simply not allow it anymore. So it's better to do it at a time of your own choice than have it forced upon you. Otherwise, we'll be at the IMF.
It sounds simple when you hear it like that, doesn't it?
It's simpler times, isn't it?
Yeah.
I love that line. He said everything's, compared to his mother's world, everything's upside down.
Yeah.
We're pulling people with, we're basically saying we're going to bankrupt ourselves.
Yeah.
We're going to be heading for the IMF, cap in hand. You can never, ever write in copy in the Sun, the IMF, get a bailout from the IMF without having the words in front. Cap in hand. Going cap in hand to the IMF.
Well, this is the thing, because in the midst of all of this, it's sort of focus on the Middle East and focus on what's been going on in Israel. 2,000 people have arrived, apparently, by small boats in the last 4 days.
That's
right?
the thing. What he's saying is that this isn't a matter of, whether it's right or wrong. It's a matter of simple maths. We are going to bankrupt this country unless we get a grip on spending. And it was very sweet, actually. He used that sort of famous analogy that I don't think he even did it on purpose, but it's just so clearly ingrained into his mind. He used that famous analogy that Margaret Thatcher was used to about a housewife looking after the family purse.
Right.
If Britain was if Britain was trying to look after the family purse, we'd be in dire straits.
We'd have the bailiffs round, looking for when you're going to make the payment.
The question is, we're going to have to join the queue at the IMF.
Right.
Does the IMF even have enough money to bail us out?
And then that brings us back to Starmer in the end, because here we have the situation going on with China, which is a massive story, really, which hasn't really quite run out. I don't think. I think it's going for a while. But the basis of it seems to be that Britain is now in hock to China for so much money, they can't afford to upset them because they might want to borrow more.
Might need to, if you look what Donald Trump's done with China, he's whacked those tariffs on it. That will have painful effects. I think people just need to level a little bit more with the public. That actually, look, we are reliant. This is what Labour think. If they genuinely think, look, we've got anemic growth. We're growing at barely 1% a year. We cannot do anything to upset the apple cart. We didn't. The roof hasn't been fixed while the sun was shining. The sun hasn't shone for a very long time. The roof's on fire, in fact. Yeah. And there is no headroom.
But the whole building's burning down.
The building's burning down. And there's no headroom. There's no rainy day fund. There's no kitty. We're already maxed out the credit card. On debt interest, on massive NHS spending, on 6 million people lying around on sickness benefits that perhaps many of them shouldn't be on, and you just think, just be honest, say that we can't afford to fall out with China, we can't afford to upset America, and I think people would actually have more truck with that than just pretending. And say, oh no.
But would people not be really, really angry though if they found out that okay, that's one thing, we can't fall out with China, but you're now actually collapsing a trial in order not to fall out with them?
I always say, if you're not angry, you're not paying attention.
Yeah. Well, I'm always angry.
That's because we're paying attention.
Because we're paying attention. And let's not forget, Margaret Thatcher's portrait in Downing Street was removed.
That was the way you've annoyed me now, because that was the one question I forgot to ask Mark Thatcher about. Yeah.
Because he didn't want to have a portrait looking down at him, so he said. He seems to mind him having them at Chequers. He's got a load of portraits there. He didn't take those down.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because every politician has to sort of pay homage to Thatcher and do that sort of. And I remember reading some piece before the election where he was going to use the metal of Thatcher to drive his plan for change or some gibberish some word salad he cooked up.
Well, because they try and come out with these sort of phrases, don't they, that are going to be memorable, and they're just. It's not working for him. That scene yesterday in Sharm el Sheikh, where he thinks he's going to talk, and then he gets completely just minced.
I just think, looking at it from where I sit now, which is about 5,000 miles away in Washington, you just look at that and go, these guys, they're just duff.
Right.
They're just duds.
And the whole thing about...
Trump's just not very good at it.
No, Trump's day yesterday, it was so brilliant because we weren't quite expecting it to work as smoothly as it all did. But, 6:30, first word that 7 hostages have been released. The next thing you see is an image of Air Force One coming in to land in Tel Aviv. And you just go, this guy is directing a movie.
No, exactly.
He's not just running the world. He's filming it.
He's not a young man, and he's,
he's got an amazing energy.
36 hours, 37 hours, 30 hours on the road yesterday. He did 4 or 5 interactions with the press. It's bizarre. It's the left, the demented left in the States, after having covered up Joe Biden's obvious mental and physical decline, are desperate to get this idea that Trump's gone mad. And you look at this and you just go, Yeah.
What are you going to say?
Yeah,
They can't. I mean,
come on.
even Hillary Clinton had to acknowledge that he'd done a
No.
good job.
Yeah.
You know? And I mean, I can't wait for his response to that when he sees that she's done that. That'd be
Yeah,
tremendous.
no, and tonight he's back in. He's landing. He's in the air now.
Yeah.
I think he may be landing any moment. But back to the White House. He's got Milei, the Argentinian president, coming, so that should be lively. And then he's giving the Presidential Medal of Freedom. I think Medal of Freedom, which is the highest medal in the land, posthumously to Charlie Kirk, the activist. Sure, so he's got a packed day as well today. So the guy never stops.
And there's some talk of him having Zelensky there to see if he can solve the
I think
Ukraine
he's seeing
as
Zelensky
well.
on Friday. So
yeah.
I might call. Yeah, I'll let you know about that.
Yeah,
I'll
do.
patch in.
It might have
Patch in.
ended the war in Ukraine by Saturday.
Well, I don't know. I think Putin might be a trickier customer than Hamas. I'm afraid.
Yeah, I know. It sounds strange to say that, but you're probably right. Harry Cole, great to see you, as ever. Editor at large. We'll see you back soon here, probably on
to the
Zoom.
airport.
Get to the airport. I hope the first class lounge has been prepared for you.
I wish. I'm not. We're not Jeremy Kyle. Come on.
No, I know. He's got his driver waiting and everything. Let's get a quick voice note from James on Starmer.
Morning, Mike. James from Liverpool here. How you doing, fella? Oh, I tell you what, he cheers us up, doesn't he, when he gets stitched up like that. Just having a thought, the British people detest them. Trump now no longer likes him, and the Israelis dislike him. You know, how much more can he do in 12 months? You know, another 12 months. We'll probably have the most of Europe who don't particularly like us anyway, but that's not particularly his fault, even though he's trying to cozy up to them. But I reckon he could do a job there as well. Honestly, he's got to be an implant from reform. He's doing that badly. Have a great day, my friend. Watch that video all day. It'll cheer you up.
James, brilliant. Thank you very much indeed. Should we have another look at it? We might as well. Here he is. Donald Trump suggesting to him that you might want to come up to the podium, but then completely rounding on him and making him look stupid.
United Kingdom. Where's United Kingdom? Where's our friend? Come here. Is everything going good?
Very good.
That's very nice that you're here. These people all came in like 20-minute notice, and I think it's fantastic. And we have so many others, and just so many others. And
yeah, poor old Starmer is left hanging there like a sort of like a dummy, a stuffed dummy, in fact, like a mannequin. This is that sort of look on his face. That's the look. I don't know what's going on. This from Mark in Selby. Mike, I wonder what Sadiq Khan would do if Muslims had the words "go home" shouted at them in public. Would he accept the context of those words, or would he insist it is a racist chant? It is clearly a racist chant, as is From the River to the Sea. What a nasty, divisive piece of work London's mayor is. And Phil from Essex says, what the Home Secretary now needs to do is to state that any organisation that supports Hamas or shows any sign of any anti-Semitic propaganda or views towards Israel should be classed as terrorists. As such, any of the protesters should be arrested and all of their assets seized, says Phil from Essex. Well, you have to wonder about the Metropolitan Police, don't you? We last saw them in action on Saturday, arresting a pro-Jewish demonstrator who was simply holding up a sign saying that we stand with British Jews. He got arrested for causing a breach of the peace, and when he asked the police officer why, he said, I'm just following orders. Extraordinary stuff. 23 minutes past 9. Nicole Lampert coming next.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to 27 minutes past 9. This one from Paul. Quite right, Mike. Everyone's shouting that hateful trope should have a knock on their door on Sunday morning, but I won't hold my breath. Yeah, well, I mean, there's so much inconsistency right now when it comes to government policy on everything from Gaza to pro-Palestinian marches in the streets of London or Manchester or indeed Edinburgh or elsewhere. Nicole Lampert is here, a journalist, of course, a woman who's been campaigning as well for the last 2 years and a bit to try and do something to rescue those hostages. Yesterday, finally, all 20 living hostages came home. And I was saying earlier, Nicole, very good morning to you, what an amazing feeling it must be for those people to wake up in a clean bed this morning, wondering if it's all a bit of a dream, because for 737 days they've been waking up in horrible conditions, in tunnels, probably haven't seen the light of day for possibly months, if not a couple of years. You know, it must be a remarkable situation.
Absolutely. I've interviewed some previous hostages about those early days, and I think it's quite disorientating. They're going to be spending the next few days probably in hospital, having multiple checkups. Many of them have been starved over this time, and that will affect some of their internal organs. Some of them were injured on October 7 and will still have injuries from there and from some sort of even if they were operated on, it was often done badly.
Yeah.
We've seen with previous hostages that they've had to go in for repeated operations. And then after this time, then they will then go into what's kind of known as the hostage hotel alongside their family, which is next to one of the hospitals.
Right.
And they kind of get a suite of rooms, and they get to be with their family. But one of the hostages, Eli Sharabi, who's got a book out, which I'd recommend because it's an amazing book about human spirit and someone kind of coming out positively. He just talked to me about just the joy being able to go to the fridge and get some food out. You brush your teeth with toothpaste.
Yeah.
And just to be able to make your own mind up, not to have to ask to go to the toilet.
Right.
These are all things that they've not had for 2 years. So it's absolutely amazing. And just to say that obviously they only came out yesterday, but some of the stories of torture they've been through have already come out. For example, one of them, he was left completely alone for 2 years, apart from obviously having some food shoved at him. Others were tortured, others went through mental torture, others were told their families had been killed when they hadn't. And we'll be finding out more as the time goes on.
I mean, amazing story in the front of the Mail today, where it's sort of the getting back together of Noah and Avinatan, which was a very high-profile kidnapping, wasn't it, at the time? She was the one who was on the back of a moped shouting, "Please don't murder me." He was taken as well. But they say they can reveal he kept the fact that he was an Israeli Special Forces soldier. They never knew that, and they never found out.
Yeah, which is amazing in itself. I think he was also employed. So I think perhaps he was a reservist, because there's also been his boss, whoever that might be, has come out and done a kind of jokey thing about where have you been, why haven't you been at work? And,
right.
But you'll be pleased to know your shares have gone up. But that was one of the kind of heart-stopping moments of some of these reunions. She was rescued by Special Forces. And she has been advocating for him around the world ever since. He's actually got a British mother, and she's been on the airwaves and around the world trying to campaign for his release. Another one that was really beautiful was some twins, Gali and Ziv Berman. They'd both been held hostage separately. One of them was taken with Emily Damari, the British hostage. They lived in the same kibbutz, and they'd been kept as hostages but separate. So there's an amazing image of the two of them meeting together for the first time.
Right.
So there is a real beauty. A lot of us were celebrating, but there are still 24 bodies of hostages that have been left in Gaza.
And there are worries, aren't there, that I think even Hamas don't really know where all of those bodies are, because who knows how long they've been dead.
Exactly, and probably a lot of people that buried them are dead themselves. and then there's the fact that perhaps Hamas is kind of stalling on this second part. It's the deal itself is amazing. It's amazing that all of these hostages were released. It shows what happens if Western countries put pressure on Hamas to do a deal. And in this particular case, I think it was Qatar and to a degree Turkey, as opposed to what our own government did, which was to reward them with a state by just saying, here you go, here's a state. So I think Israel has a good idea of where quite a lot of them are buried, just from the people that it's caught and who have told them. But now there's a chance for even if Israel doesn't do it itself, the IDF, it can tell into the international force that's meant to be going in, this is where we think the hostages are. Please see if you can get their bodies.
Right. And I said this yesterday to a couple of guests, that I wonder what the reflections will be in a few weeks' time, because all of the PR propaganda that came out of Hamas and came out of Gaza, all of the stuff that was written, the doctors who would come on and say that these terrible events were happening, children were being starved, 14,000 children are going to die, babies are going to die, pictures of children looking emaciated who it turned out were actually suffering from cancer, all the famines that were supposed to be taking place, all of that now seems to have banished into nothing. It means nothing, and in the end you've got a very strong Prime Minister of Israel. I know a lot of people think he's too strong and too hardline and too right-wing, but he's won basically.
Yeah, I think he has and he hasn't. I think the interesting thing with Netanyahu is that he isn't as right-wing as the rest of his cabinet, and because the centrists who he used to go into politics with, because it has a proportional representation, you have to form coalitions. They refused to go into government with him, and so he went into bed with some very far right people, and they've kind of hampered this war. They may have helped continue it, but also, yes, he's kind of won, in that we still don't know what's going to happen. So Hamas, yes, they've agreed to disarm, but as we can see just from images that are coming out of Gaza over the last few days, what they say and what they mean are two different things. And it may be that, I predict there's going to be some sort of civil war. And then the issue is then who then goes in. Because if it's, for example, Turkey and Qatar, if they're putting boots on the ground, then you have the Muslim Brotherhood people who the backers of Hamas, and they are now next door to Israel. So there's still a lot of question marks. So, and even when you think about Iran and Hezbollah, I was in Israel a few weeks ago. I was on a kibbutz on the border with Lebanon, and the people there think that Hezbollah are returning. So but I think one of the things about living in Israel is the knowledge that the people, your neighbours, are often going to want to kill you. And I think that's one of the interesting things that Donald Trump is trying to do, is trying to speak to the Arab street and say, there's got to be another way, and most of that starts with the acceptance that Israel is there to stay, and then once that happens, then perhaps we really can see the peace that he's talking about. But I'm still unsure about all of that. And in terms of what's going on in Gaza, like, international journalists are going to be able to start going in soon, and they're going to see utter destruction of the buildings, but they'll also be wondering where the dead bodies are, and that's because they're not. That's because Israel told the people to move. So while we have seen many thousands killed because it is a war, it doesn't reflect the destruction of the buildings. Israel is the only army in history that has told civilians, leave this building. They've phoned them. They've used all sort of modern technology, as well as dropping leaflets saying, leave this area. And it's been, of course, awful for the Palestinian people who have moved from place to place, living in tents, very uncomfortable, not sure where their next meal will come from. But at the same time, Israel has been trying to dismantle the tunnel structure, the structure of Hamas, so that perhaps there can be, so that Hamas can no longer control the Strip.
Yeah, I think so. Well, let's hope that it all works out for the best, because the alternative is not really one that anybody wants to think about. Nicole, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Nicole Lampert, their journalist and campaigner for the past 2 years and a bit. Mary from Colchester says this: Mike, the born and bred phrase is not a problem. The Reform Council needs a bit more grit and not to self-censure and fall into these obvious traps set by these lefty journos. Her statement was a fact, not a belief, and she shouldn't have been so apologetic. Sorry too much rant about these days. Don't worry, Mary, it's okay. You don't have to apologise for ranting. That's what we do here. Let's get a voice note from Sarah.
Morning, Mike. Just listening to your chat with Zia, sensible man as always. It's just regarding the born and bred here comment. Okay, she said it. I don't have a problem with it. I don't think it's offensive. But what is offensive is the amount of grovelling that she did in the form of an apology almost immediately. That's what's really bad. And the sanctimonious comments from the reporter, you know, oh, look, I scored a point over this woman. I mean, really? Is that where we are now in this country? I mean, it's such a sad state of affairs. Sorry, I'm puffing a bit because I'm out with the dog. Great show.
You didn't tell us where you were born and bred, though, Sarah. I mean, come on. Get with the programme. But yeah, listen, it's okay. Puffing and huffing out with the dog is good, generally speaking. Yeah, it's mad, isn't it? You can't say something like born and bred because it's somehow perceived to be racist. Do me a favour. It's 9:37.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, coming up to 20 minutes to 10. Julie Hartley-Brewer here at 10. Pauline Crew says, morning, around Israel and Gaza, there are plenty of cash-rich countries who, for their benefit and peace, would surely be the ones to rebuild and guarantee a peace deal. Why is it always seems to be Western states who are picking up the bill? Well, I think you'll find that they probably do contribute quite a lot as well. And certainly so they take some refugees in all sorts of countries around Palestine as well. But, you know, there's no reason why Britain should get involved. We haven't got any money, that's for sure. Let's get a voice note from Darren.
Morning, Mike. Darren from Warsaw. I'm a bit confused. If Keir Starmer and Britain played such a vital role as that clown Phillipson claimed, then surely Donald Trump would have known exactly where two-tier was. He'd have had him by his side, and he would have said this deal would not have got across the line without this man. But the fact that he didn't even know where he was standing, and Keir has to stand there waving like Andy Pandy. I'm here, Donald. Pathetic.
That's about right. Spot on, Darren. Thank you very much indeed. Mike Graham, Trump, where's the UK? Nowhere. That's where. Starmer fully deserved that rebuff. Says George. Yeah, absolutely right. And Martin from Bristol says, morning, gents. Starmer had to be on hand yesterday in case Trump dropped his papers again. What a poodle. Yeah, you remember that time when he was over in America and Trump probably deliberately, threw his papers on the ground and suddenly Starmer was crawling about on the ground trying to pick them all up for him. Absolutely embarrassing. Shocking. Anyway, let's talk to Robert Bates, Research Director at the Centre for Migration Control. Lots to discuss. A lot of countries now backing the UK on reforming the ECHR to ease deportations. I think it's still only about 26 people who have been returned to France, where we've got more than, I think, 12,000 have arrived since the imposition of this new one-in, one-out scheme, which I know I hate calling it that. Robert, very good morning to you. I'm told as well, by the way, that it's around 2,000 have come on the small boats in the last 4 days alone.
Yeah, it's been quite busy in the Channel in recent days. We've of course had a few periods of lull, but in general the numbers are still way above where they were even in 2022. So I think we're still on for a record year. And what we're seeing from the government with this big announcement that they're clearly very excited about, that they've got a coalition of people willing to potentially amend some parts of the ECHR, is that they're looking for another gimmick. Basically, the centre of gravity in British politics on where we need to be in relation to the ECHR, i.e. outside of it, has shifted so dramatically away from Labour that once again they're having to play catch-up. Really underwhelming set of suggestions as to how they'd go about doing this. I mean, how often have we seen in recent years British governments say, oh, we're going to go over and secure a big renegotiation in Europe and it's going to change everything fundamentally. Of course, David Cameron did it in 2015. So I really think this is nothing more than a few headlines that they're desperately trying to seize. And Europe can do whatever they want, to be honest, because we're leaving. We won't be leaving under this government, but whichever centre-right government comes in next to replace this catastrophic one, we will be out. So they can talk about it however much they want, but at the end of the day, I think it's settled in this country now.
Yeah, I think so. Because the point is that the sheer numbers of people who have come to this country have now outweighed the numbers that were ever thought to be coming. And so I think even people who never thought immigration was a problem before now see it for what it is in almost every part of the country.
It is basically a device that is solely being used to prise open Britain's borders, to undermine our sovereignty. And of course, it's not just the ECHR, it's the entrapments that have come along with it under Blairite reorganisations of how our courts work and introductions of things like the Human Rights Act. But the sheer numbers, I mean, closing in on 60,000 now, having come in under Keir Starmer, this is a situation that since it first began in 2018 is actually getting worse 7 years on, rather than in any way abating. So I think the British public have finally snapped on this issue. I think they've snapped for a while, but I really don't see how anything less than the radical decision to leave the ECHR is a way out of this mess that we're in now.
Yeah, and I mean, as you see other countries, as you say, joining in, it's almost as though people have worked out that the ECHR is no longer fit for purpose, which is, of course, what Nigel Farage has been saying for quite some time.
Exactly. Well, I think it's taken far too long for sort of analog politicians to clock that all the sort of post-Second World War apparatus that was introduced, whether it's the ECHR or the Refugee Convention, has long since served its time. These were things that were introduced in an era of less mobility and less mass communication. So I think it's a long overdue recognition that these things are more albatrosses around the neck of sovereign countries rather than in any means or any sensible way the sort of upholders of human rights. I mean, it was never compatible for Britain to be involved in such a thing anyway. This is something that really only got inflicted on us properly by Tony Blair and his obsession with basically destroying our constitution. But I think we're moving in the right direction on this. I really don't think these sort of Labour sound bites that they've put out in any way actually will address the issue. And a lot of real thought has gone in now, whether it's from the Conservative Party and Lord Wolfson or Restore Britain or the Prosperity Institute, on how we actually go about leaving the ECHR. So I think basically this is the ascendant side of the argument now.
Yes, but there's also an awful lot of talk, and the Tories have started doing it now, about mass deportations. You know, Kerry Badenoch was talking about 150,000 mass deportations a year.
Yeah, which is exciting. I mean, I don't think they're planned quite realise the resources that they would need. I don't think 1.6 billion a year is enough, but I also think this is where the conversation is now. People are sick of the very thought of having over 1 million illegal migrants living in this country, putting pressure on public services, undermining really our sovereignty and what it is to be a British citizen. So I think this is an inevitable sort of mainstream centre ground position that politicians and parties are once again having to play catch up with. We know the vast majority of the public in every region of the country want the deportation of every single illegal migrant. So it's something that, again, it won't happen under this government, but it is an inevitability.
Yeah, I think so. Robert, good to speak to you. Thanks very much indeed. Robert Bates, Research Director of the Centre for Migration Control. Here's one from Michael. He says, morning, Mike. I was working over the road when Thatcher died down in Eaton Square and thinking about it all now. The loony lefties were out on the streets singing Ding Dong, the witch is dead. It just goes to show the left hasn't changed all these years later with their hatred. That's the problem, isn't it? And Dave in South Gloucester says, Starmer may well have removed the portrait of Lady Thatcher because he doesn't like people looking down at him. He must be really uncomfortable now as the whole world is looking down on him. Yeah, exactly. And the whole world is looking down at him thinking, what an absolute plonker. Let's get a voice note from Wayne.
Good morning, Mike. So that Reform Councillor, bless her, that's what we want from a politician, don't we? She felt she made a mistake and she instantly tried to backtrack. I mean, if she was a Labour councillor, she would have said, I didn't know what I said, that's not what I meant, I didn't understand the implications, that's not how it was meant to come across. Every excuse in the book bar, I probably shouldn't have said that.
Yeah, I know. It's extraordinary, isn't it? I mean, incredible that she would think that she would have to say that, and incredible that she would have to put up with that ridiculous journalist who was there saying this is why, you know, people think you're not very welcoming to immigrants. Really? What, because you're actually born and bred in Falkirk? I mean, I would be more upset that I was born and bred in Falkirk. In fact, I know Falkirk. I used to live not far from it. It's not that nice, to be honest. I wouldn't admit to being born and bred there. Anyway, sorry. Lithgow's a lot nicer, trust me. This is Talk. Hello, Jezza.
You all right?
I'm good.
Yeah,
what are you
did you
doing?
drink?
I've had my drink.
Well, I've been running around.
I'm ready now.
I'm sure you are.
Should
right.
we start the show?
No, we can't. Saturday the 15th of November, here's a promise. You will not have seen anything like it. You will get honesty, you will get authenticity, and if we get our way, you might even be able to cram it at the top. 3-tier World of Common Sense with Mike Graham.
And Jeremy Kyle.
In that order.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. Coming up to about 9 minutes to 10. We'll be here, of course, until 10 o'clock. Julie Hartley-Brewer in just before that to tell us what's coming up on her show from 10 till 1. Then, of course, it is Ian Collins in from 1 till 4. Then it's Jeremy Kyle. Then it's Kevin O'Sullivan with the political asylum. Lots more going on. There'll be reports coming in, I'm sure, from Downing Street about when Keir Starmer is going to address the China syndrome and the China crisis, because he still hasn't done that yet. Earlier on, though, I spoke to Connie Shaw from the Free Speech Union about Reform Councillor Claire Mackey-Brown, who stopped herself when she was being interviewed for her sort of job as a councillor in Falkirk in Scotland by a journalist. She stopped herself when she said these words, born and bred.
We live in a culture of self-censorship, and her almost wanting to retract it, saying she wished she hadn't said it. It's almost foreboding about the fact she was then reported to the police. And obviously we don't know by who, but it seems to be a cultural thing now where if you see someone or hear someone say something that you don't like, that people think that they have the right to report them to the police. Now, the police have been very quick and said that there's no criminality to be found here, but it seems as though the police actually looked into it. You know, as soon as they see something like that, you know that there's no criminality. It's similar with Deborah Anderson. The fact that the police officers had to go to her house, even though they knew that she hadn't broken the law, because otherwise she would have been arrested. They had seen on social media, Deborah Anderson, by the way, the American citizen who had the police officer come to her house. The one who was suffering from cancer.
And when they went there, they said to her, you haven't broken the law. It's like, well, why are you here then?
Yes, exactly. So it's why the police even have to say there's no criminality. Well, we all knew that. But it's just outrageous. And, you know, the FSU were on standby for Claire in case she needed to take any legal action, and we're still there supporting her just in case anything else happens. But yeah, absolutely outrageous. There's another case of people not being able to talk about facts.
Well, it became a thing, didn't it, on social media, people saying, I was born and bred here. You know, it's just sort of people started reacting to it. Because I think the insidious bit about it as well is that people can complain to the police anonymously, so you never get to find out who it is that's complained, even if you're the subject of an investigation. And you have no right, apparently, to ask who's complained. Is that right?
Yeah, well, sometimes you never hear who the complainant was. I don't know whether, you know, they have to protect the anonymity of some people in these cases. But that's certainly the case. I mean, look at when Graham Linehan was arrested. I mean, he had a suspicion straight away who had reported him, but you're not told upon arrest or when the police come to your house who it is. Sometimes you don't even get told what the comment was. The same with Deborah Anderson. She never knew what we still don't know what it was that the police had seen on social media for them to come to her house. They've now claimed that they accidentally deleted the record of it. So it's this extraordinary culture within the police. We have 30 people a day being arrested for just 2 speech offences. So the actual number is probably much higher. That's just two offences under our laws. And we don't hear about all of them in the press. I think lots of people think that some of our cases at the FSU, you only hear about them because they're so rare and so shocking that they get into the press. No, absolutely not. We don't. Most of these cases we never hear about.
No, of course. I mean, we remember when we were talking first of all about the Bell Hotel in Epping, and it turned out that in Essex, something like you know, at least one, sometimes 1.5 people, I know that's just a weird statistic, are getting questioned and getting arrested by the police over hate speech.
We cannot continue like this. You know, it used to be that you can't talk about, you know, the reality of biological sex, and it's very quickly shifted to talking about the reality of the makeup in the UK. I mean, look at the reaction to Robert Jenrick talking about the lack of integration when he went to Birmingham. And this other story about this reform head teacher.
What's this one about?
This head teacher who supports reform, the local Labour Party in the area, saying that she's a safeguarding risk to the school, which is insane. I mean, it seems this cultural thing of reporting people for political opinions you don't like seems to have corrupted the Labour Party, our own government.
It does seem to have corrupted the Labour Party and, of course, the rest of the country, where the lefties have tried to make it impossible for people to talk about where they are born and bred, because, of course, it must in some way be an insult, because it's not inclusive. A bit like that Labour MP who was walking around saying, oh, you know, I don't mind waving a union flag everywhere. But the trouble is some people don't agree with it. Some people don't like it. It makes me feel uncomfortable. Deary me. Let's talk to, get a voice note, in fact, from Alan on Starmer's humiliation.
Morning, Mike. Alan from Swansea here.
Trump has every opportunity to humiliate Starmer. Trump never forgets. Remember in the election, Starmer sent 100 envoys to support Kamala Harris. And then years ago, I'm anti-Trump. Trump plays him like a fool he is. But hopefully when Starmer gets back this country, let's hope Parliament holds him account, because everything is scandal, he disappears. Remember the Mandelson, Sweeney, 740,000 grand. He brought the digital ID in. Now, the China spy, that's ongoing. This character needs to be brought to account. When is enough, for goodness sake? But well done, Donald J. Trump. Fantastic as ever. Sorting the peace and putting Starmer in his place. What an absolute fool. I am stop laughing. Keep up the great show, buddy. Ta-ra.
Alan, thank you very much. It's amazing how many people have got so much pleasure out of watching Keir Starmer being completely and utterly humiliated. We should probably have another look at it, shouldn't we, since we're at the end of the show? Shall we look at the actual audio of it?
United Kingdom. Where's United Kingdom? Where's our friend? Come here. Is everything going good?
Very good.
That's very nice that you're here. These people all came in like 20-minute notice, and I think it's fantastic. And we have so many others, and just so many others. And
look at his face. How about this from Pauline? Says, morning, Mike. Have you got the clip of Trump's long handshake with Emmanuel Macron? That was really funny as well. Yeah, check this out. There he is. So they sort of do that thing where there's a bit of arm clutching. This is a manly thing that you do, and then one of them doesn't let go of the hand. So you've got Trump shaking his hand, and then Macron tries to hold it back towards his chest, and then there's a bit of a arm wrestling thing going on, and neither one of them is letting go. It's a very weird thing to watch. It's all very strange, isn't it? I mean, I've never seen so many people take so much pleasure in watching the sort of humiliation of Emmanuel Macron and Keir Starmer. You may not like Donald Trump, but I mean, you don't like Keir Starmer even more, I think, is probably what we can conclude. Julie Hartley-Brewer's here.
Very good morning. I have to say, every time I see
it's
that,
great, isn't it?
I mean, I'm loving the handshake, the Macron handshake
thing, yeah.
But I mean, Keir Starmer just looked like a sort of kid who'd been brought up on stage by the head teacher. Thing is, another Prime Minister, or him, if he wasn't just so useless and awful and despises us, we would all be up in arms. I mean, you and I have been leading the march.
Yes.
This is outrageous treatment of our Prime Minister, humiliating our country. But we also feel he doesn't represent us. He's just this bloke that we're stuck with for a few years.
Exactly.
And
he's trying
we're quite
desperately.
Happy to see it.
He's like a bad football manager, you know, because he's not in charge of the country. He's just renting it, and he's running it for a while.
But all these people turning up, you know, and just sort of pretending they're players.
I know.
The only impact we had as a country because of Keir Starmer on this negotiating deal was basically to strengthen Hamas's arm.
Yeah.
It was absolute source of shame. Yeah. Absolute source of shame. Well, we're going to be talking about that also as Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary. I mean, saying the quiet bit out loud.
Yeah.
Some of the protesters on our streets